let's say cameras are being filmed. Or is it being broadcast? Oh, in the Great Hall.
And welcome back, everyone. Day 2 of Business Solves. Once again, I'm here in the briefing center, getting some insights from what we hear and see from Business Solves 2025. And today, I'm joined by Wes Parham and Eric Eversole, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we can expect today. But first, I want to make sure I thank the sponsors for partnering with us on Business Solves this year. Couldn't be possible without you, so we definitely thank all of our sponsors. I'm sure you've seen it if you've been here for the last couple of days around the building. Just want to show some gratitude to our partners for making this possible. Now, I want to hop in, but first, Wes, I want to start with you. You and Eric, in your own ways, focus on helping people get jobs, which in turn helps families, communities, and employers. But I want to, have you talk a little bit about your organization, and then also, how do you advance workforce development?
Sure, thanks, Joe. Pinnacle Assurance is a workers' compensation specialist, and so we know that we're successful as a business and a company when those that we serve are themselves successful. And workforce development, of course, is such a big part of that, and what supports our economy and helps it grow and thrive so that we can reinvest back into our communities. And our philosophy at Pinnacle is, we don't want to just be in the room with other employers. We want to be learning alongside other employers so that we can lead. And we've activated various career-connected learning opportunities and an apprenticeship program that I'm excited to share more about later this morning.
Awesome. Eric, same question, a little bit about HOH and how you advance in workforce development.
Well, Hiring Our Heroes is now a little more than a decade old, and since 2011, we've been working with the military community, both transitioning service members, veterans, and military spouses, and connecting them with great companies across the country. And really, how do you leverage those military skill sets that are incredibly valuable for the workforce and help translate those so civilian companies understand that just because you flew helicopters in the Army doesn't mean that you want to be a helicopter pilot when you get out. Those leadership skills, the resiliency, the problem-solving abilities, those are all incredibly valuable in the modern 21st century workforce, especially as the workforce landscape evolves. And it's really about giving companies the opportunities to see those skill sets firsthand, to experience them, and make those connections that allow them to then hire these service members and their family members and allow them to thrive in companies.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Now, I know both of you have upcoming sessions. So Wes, anything folks can expect from your session or anything you're looking forward to that we can kind of tease out for folks?
I hope that folks leave today with the understanding that businesses today have a generational opportunity to define what learning, and might I say education, looks like in an increasingly skills-based economy, because that economy is moving fast. To your point, Eric, the landscape of workforce is changing at a pace that we've never seen before, and if we sit stagnant, we're all toast. But we have a real opportunity to step up and lead to define what that looks like.
And Eric, anything your upcoming session?
Well, I agree with Wes. We're going to be toast if we don't really start to adapt the way we hire and bring talent into our workforce. And I know most of the companies in this room understand that. They're working aggressively to bring skills-based talent into their workforce. It's not easy. This is not like hiring 10 years ago where you can see that somebody has a particular skill set with a company that's similar to yours and you can just simply hire them away from a company. We have a generational opportunity to help young Americans understand what real economic opportunity looks like in this country, and that's pretty exciting. And I know the companies here are rising to the challenges. We work with them and see that every day. On the military side, I will just say this, Joe, when you talk about hiring veterans and military spouses, it's not charity. This is one of the most incredibly talented workforces in this country. They have the skill sets to adapt and to be trainable, which is going to be critical for the 21st century workforce. And they just oftentimes need a foot in the door and an opportunity to showcase those skills. So we're going to talk about that today, and really excited to do that with General Eastman.
That's awesome. Well, Eric, Wes, thanks so much for joining me for a couple minutes here. Well, we're ready to get going, so welcome Chamber Foundation President Mike Carney as he officially kicks us off for today.
Good morning. Thank you for coming back. You must have enjoyed yesterday. So yesterday, I heard something that stopped me cold. Dr. Borla said, "Time is life. It's not money, it's life." And that's the kind of urgency that we're bringing to our work and that I'd like to convey to you as we enter into the back half of Business Solves. When we, as the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation community, say we're going to convene to discuss the way business solves, that's what we mean: urgency, impact. We're here because the world doesn't just need us, it's counting on us. So thank you for showing up this week, whether you came from down the street or across the country. Two of my favorite words: for good. Not because it's easy, not because it's popular, not because we have to. We're here for good. And at this moment, when the once routine feels complex, and what we grew up calling American norms seems to be shifting, our country needs all of us in this room to stay focused, to serve our communities in the unique ways that we can. And there is tremendous change and tremendous good already happening. Last month, for example, we hosted 25 judges from developing countries as part of our Judicial Fellows program. From places like Ukraine, where threats to the rule of law are anything but abstract. We've created a global community of judges who are doing the hard work to advance the rule of law and advance democracy itself. That's what we mean by business solves. We stand for good. It's my joy as Foundation President to be among you this week, knowing you believe, like I do, that we have the power for good against problems that wake you up at 3 a.m. But I've got to be honest with you. There are two forces in this room right now that don't care about our good intentions. They don't care about our strategic plans or our 5-year goals. They're working against us right now in this very moment. The constancy of change, the unstoppable passage of time. There's no escaping either. The only choice is to stand tall and act now. How do you catalog the degree of change that we are living through? The history books will tell the story, but we don't have a guidebook for this moment. Here's what we do have: the knowledge that Americans have always shaped change rather than endured it. We've molded change to fit our values. We've made the United States an exceptional place to build, to dream, to serve. Our cultural norm is courage in the face of change and calling forward civic engagement to shape what comes next. Yes, Washington is in flux. If you haven't seen the newspapers, the government is shut down. Watch the news for 10 minutes, the rules changed again. But does that stop us from fixing the broken pipeline between classrooms and careers? No. Does it stop us from helping communities prepare for the next hurricane, the next wildfire, The next crisis? No, not for 1 second. Change is constant. But so is our commitment to live on purpose. We fight for good. So what will you choose to do differently? Now let me address the other reality, the one we're all pretending doesn't exist: time. As optimists, we tell ourselves we'll always have more of it. More time for that big goal at work. More time for the people we love. More time to make our mark. But here's the ruthless truth you need to hear. Time doesn't care. It doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't care that you were too busy, too uncertain, too afraid. When my turn comes to look back, I want to be able to say two things. I helped solve problems that seemed impossible. I did it for good, for America, for the world. Don't you want to be able to say that? Think about this. What if you don't seize this moment? What if you never look your grandchild in the eye and say, this is what we accomplished together? We are the good this world needs. But here's what we lose if we don't act. A generation of young people who look at their country and think, this isn't for me. Communities where Main Street is boarded up and hope left with the last factory. A world where America becomes a cautionary tale rather than an inspiration. That's what's at stake. In this country, you are given the opportunity to make a difference, but you're not given unlimited time. And change won't wait for you to feel ready. So here's what I'm asking. That ticking you hear, it's not just the sound effect, although it's a cool one. It's every second you're not acting. This week, this month, this year, when someone asks what you're working on, don't tell them your job title, which is anathema in Washington. Tell them the problem you're solving for good. Choose one wicked problem you're going to solve this year. Not attempt, not study, solve. Write it down, tell someone, hold yourself accountable. Time doesn't care, change doesn't wait, but you can shape what happens next. Because despite the change, despite time running out, I know this community will keep showing up. Keep solving, keep fighting for good.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. It is a pleasure to be here today to discuss a topic that lies at the heart of the Chamber Foundation's mission: our unwavering commitment to small businesses and the local communities they serve. Across the country, small businesses are more than just engines. They are more than just economic engines. They are the soul of our neighborhoods, the stewards of innovation, and the champions of resilience. They create jobs, foster opportunity, and build the connective tissue that holds our communities together. At the Chamber Foundation, we recognize that supporting small businesses is not just about economic growth, it's about investing in people. That's why we've developed programs and partnerships that empower entrepreneurs, strengthen local ecosystems, and ensure communities have the tools that they need to thrive. Our partners reach small businesses in a variety of ways. Today, you will hear from two of our partners who lead in their commitment to small businesses in creative and innovative strategies. This morning's spotlight session highlights the role of small businesses as the backbones of communities. First, Mike Hadley, Senior Director of the Workplace Business Segment at Edward Jones, will join us to discuss the role of the Workplace Business Segment in bringing innovative solutions to small businesses across their network. Following my conversation with Mr. Hadley from Edward Jones, we will hear from Julia Tchaikovsky, Integrated Marketing and Communications Advisor at FedEx, and Meredith Dooley, Vice President of Partnerships and Programs at Accion Opportunity Fund, about their dynamic partnership. I would like to now have a video from our sponsor, Edward Jones.
I want to educate people, impact my community, and get information out there so they know when they're making those retirement decisions, they're responsible and saying, okay, I know how I'm paying for my investment and all of those things. I love teaching because I care about people and I care about helping them be equipped to make good decisions for their life.
Everyone, please join me in welcoming Mr. Mike Hadley. Good morning, Mike. Thank you for joining us. Okay, everyone. Mike, thank you for joining us. Mike Hadley is the Senior Director of the Workplace Business Segment at Edward Jones. Mike brings nearly 20 years of experience in strategic growth, talent development, and organizational leadership, and has been with Edward Jones since 2008 in key roles across the US and Canada. Mike is a certified financial planner and also serves on the CFP Workforce Development Board and the Arizona Black Chamber of Commerce Board, both a reflection of his commitment to inclusive economic growth. Now, Mike, is there anything you'd like to add about your background or your role at Edward Jones?
No, that's good. Appreciate it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. So let's start with the big picture. Why is now the right time for Edward Jones to invest in workplace financial solutions for small and mid-sized businesses?
Well, thank you for that question. Thanks for letting me join you on stage, and thank you, Chamber, for letting Edward Jones share a little bit more about how we're partnering with communities to have a more positive impact on the clients we serve. So to your question about why now, I actually want to go back just a little bit. So Edward Jones has actually been serving business owners since the beginning, since we started. Workplace isn't new for us. And before I get into that, let me just level set. I've heard the phrase workplace a couple times this conference, so let me just make sure we're all on the same page. At Edward Jones, when we use the phrase workplace business segment, we're using that to describe all the products and services that you can offer to a business and its employees. So retirement, financial wellness, education, health benefits, things like that. And so go back to your question, with Edward Jones, if you go back to 100 years when we first started, that was really the principle behind our business model. Our founder saw a need to serve local businesses and people of influence in these rural towns that didn't have access to financial professionals because they weren't close to Wall Street firms. So fast forward, we've since evolved and served more than just the rural communities, but it's not new for us. What is new, though, with our business segment focus, our workplace business segment focus, is the investment we're making in this side of the business to expand our footprint. And we're doing it, I'd say, for a couple reasons. We look outside at what we're seeing and inside, and I'll share a little bit more. Outside, we see some trends. We know about 1 in 3 Americans have their first financial experience in their place of work. Like saving for a retirement plan, that was true for me when I first started. We also know about 60% of all US businesses don't have a retirement plan in place. You add that next to the fact that about 50,000 financial advisors are going to be needed in our industry in the next 5 to 6 years. All of that speaks to the need to really close the gap at such a critical point for people's investing future when they start at their place of work. But then let's look inside. I mentioned we started focusing on local businesses about 100 years ago. And because of that focus, we are now in 68% of all US counties and most provinces in Canada. And because of our footprint, we know the importance of being side by side with influencers and business owners in communities, because business owners are the backbone of communities. So for us, having this focus really allows us to accelerate how we serve and partner for a positive impact.
That's great to hear about the role that you all play across the country in Canada, across the US and Canada. Now, with such a strong local presence across North America, how does Edward Jones leverage the vast branch network to better serve communities and local businesses?
So I mentioned 68% penetration across the US and most of Canada. That comes out to about 20,000 financial advisors across North America. So with this scale, it really helps us to do a lot of great work in communities. And so I'll highlight two tied to business owners. One of the things our scale lets us do with business owners is support retirement. Today, we have over 263,000 retirement plans within our firm. And in those plans, that represents about 1.3 million participants or Americans that now have access to a professional to help serve their needs. That's incredible. Think about how many people now have someone that can help with questions like, should I buy a home? Can I afford to put my kids through college? Do I have enough for an emergency savings? So that's really powerful. So that's our scale on the retirement side. The other side is our philanthropic arm. With the Small Business Empowerment Group, we've started what's called our Main Street Initiative. And with this initiative, we now provide capital and grants to local businesses to help them build their business, from adding staff to expanding their footprint to when unforeseen circumstances come into play and they just need a leg up, we're able to do that. And so whether it is philanthropic or retirement, ultimately what we see with our workplace focus is the role we have to play in helping bolster communities and get them on their path to financial fulfillment.
Wonderful. So looking ahead, what innovations or trends do you see shaping the future of workplace financial solutions, and how should business leaders be preparing for them?
Yep. Before I look ahead, I want to look back, and I need you all to help me with this. Okay. Who here remembers going to the grocery store, maybe as a kid or taking your kids years ago, and seeing a table with the Girl Scouts selling Girl Scout cookies? Yeah? Okay. I can remember that. I remember that because my dad would use the excuse when we go to the grocery store and he'd see them and say, sorry, I don't have cash, because he didn't want my mom to get more Thin Mints. And then we'd go in the grocery store, my parents would pay for groceries and write a check, and we'd leave. Fast forward to today. If I went to that same grocery store and saw somebody writing a check, I'm sprinting out of line. And on my way out the store, when I seen that same table with Girl Scouts and tried to use the I don't have cash excuse, they said, well, we don't even take cash. We got QR codes, tap to pay, right? So what does that story have to do with your question? The same generation that was used to paying with cash and check spent a lifetime building a legacy that they are now transferring to the generations who are used to QR codes. That transfer we see over the next 20 years is to the tune of about $84 trillion in assets. So for us, it's not only about the clients we serve today, but the clients of the future. And technology is going to play such an important role in that. Just last week, we announced a few technology partnerships that we launched at Edward Jones, and I'll give a commercial on a couple. And these are specific to local businesses. One that we just announced was a partnership with a group named Aboon. Aboon is a digital third-party administrator that just makes the account opening process and the paperwork for businesses starting retirement plans so much easier. And if anybody's ever dealt with that or knows what that's like, it's arduous, it's a headache. And so with this new platform, we're now working with businesses on a process that used to take weeks and months. Now when they're opening their first retirement plan, hours, days, like making it so much better. So that's the first. The second technology that we just launched is with a group named Addition Wealth. And this is digital financial wellness and education for all of the participants across retirement plans. So go back to the comment I was saying about that 1.3 million Americans or 1.3 million plan participants. For any of those individuals who are now on this platform, now they have digital tools in their hand to help them with those big questions. And oh, by the way, it's no charge. Again, it's just really helping people be better at how they can reach their goals. And that's whether you pay with cash, check, QR code, tap to pay, stare at your phone like most of us. We believe all Americans should be able to have access to achieving their goals. So, Shanique, I gotta ask you though.
Yes?
What's your favorite Girl Scout cookie?
My favorite Girl Scout cookies. Samoa's, hands down, no question.
No.
Thank you.
Thin Mints? Everybody got a box of Thin Mints in their freezer? Just me? Okay.
But why should mint and chocolate chip go together? You have to think about this. Okay, I'm sorry to the Thin Mint lovers. So as you're talking about the various small businesses and the local communities that Edward Jones serve, are there particular stories that stand out to you?
Yeah, I'm from Arizona originally, but I'll share one that just happened this summer in my home state of Wisconsin. Up in Milwaukee, there's a grocer. Hey, Wisconsin. There's a grocer, Sherman Park Grocers. Just this summer, we were able to work with them where they did a $10,000 grocery giveaway to commemorate their 30th anniversary, but also because there was a grocery shortage. Some grocery stores had closed down in that community. And that was through our Main Street initiative. Really excited about that.
All right, wonderful. Now, as we start to wrap up, what final thought would you like to leave our business audience with?
So over the conference and even here, I've shared a few highlights about technology and innovation, and we've heard that throughout the conference. So I want to share a story that our former managing partner, John Bachman, shared, who, by the way, I don't know if everyone knows this, John used to be the chairman of the board of the U.S. Chamber in the early 2000s. Years ago, John had got a group of leaders together, and John was like a trendsetter. He was a pioneer when it came to innovation. So I was excited, ready to hear about the latest and greatest technology. And John had asked a real simple question. I'll never forget this. He said, "What's the bet that Edward Jones is making?" And he went on to say, "The bet that we're making is that relationships matter." And I'll never forget that. And it is so true, because in financial services, and I say across all of our businesses, we're in the trust business. We're in the people business. And with all the innovations and technology changes and advancements, you can't lose sight of that. And so I'll go back to where I started with Edward Jones. What makes us special is our ability to be side by side with people of influence and business owners, human beings, helping them find financial fulfillment. And so just really excited about our journey and the steps we're taking to get there. Thank you for the time to share a little bit more about that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Mike, and great hearing about the great work that Edward Jones is doing. So please, everyone, let's thank Mike for joining us. Thank you, Mike. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Julia and Meredith. We're really excited to talk about the role that FedEx and Accion Opportunity Fund plays in terms of the partnership for the great work that you're doing on behalf of small businesses. In the last conversation, we discussed the role of Edward Jones. We were left with some powerful words about the importance of relationships, and that's a perfect segue to today's conversation. So first, I'd like you all to introduce yourselves and talk about the work that you do at your respective organizations. So Julia, let's start with you.
Sure. So my name is Julia Tchaikovsky. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. And I am the program lead for our Empowering Entrepreneurs pillar of community support within our citizenship department, a role that I've been in for just about 3 years. And the work that we do supports small businesses by providing training, connections, and capital to help small businesses compete more effectively in the global marketplace. I've been with FedEx, though, for 22 years, and in a wide variety of roles, both within citizenship and in the business. Everything spanning from pricing and revenue management to being the chief of staff for our chief marketing officer during the pandemic, which was a wild ride. But my passion and where I've spent most of my career at FedEx has been in citizenship. And if I would say the one thing that I love most of all is what we've been talking about here during this conference, and that is using your, the things that make you excellent as a business and connecting them to your citizenship programs and building those programs from the ground up to really solve critical community problems.
Wonderful, thank you, Julia. Now Meredith.
Hi everybody, good morning. I'm Meredith Dooley and I lead the advising and education practice at Accion Opportunity Fund. AOF is a community development financial institution, so our nonprofit mission is to support small business owners and help them build economic opportunity for themselves, for their employees, their families, and their communities. And in that work, we provide affordable capital, flexible capital options, but we know that capital is just one piece of this very complicated puzzle of small business success. And we seek to support our members' ability to succeed in a myriad of ways. So the team that I lead provides online education, one-on-one advisory services, and best-in-class accelerator programs like the one we're here to discuss today.
Wonderful. So please take us inside the FedEx AOF partnership. Julia, let's start with you. Tell us how FedEx is providing learning resources to small businesses and entrepreneurs, and what are the topics, takeaways, and how do they typically engage?
Sure, so I think it would be really helpful to provide some context on the landscape when this program started. So if you think back to the pandemic, especially when it first began, many small businesses were really unprepared to adapt to the switch from people going inside to their shops and their brick and mortar stores to solely, in some cases, shopping online. So a lot of the small businesses either had a website, but it wasn't really used as a primary selling channel, or they did do some sales online, but they didn't have the right tools or the resources to be able to really pivot to a more online approach at that time. So FedEx and Accion Opportunity Fund teamed together, and in 2021, we launched the FedEx e-commerce learning lab to really help these small businesses build an e-commerce presence and to grow that presence as a larger percentage of their sales. And that program really provided a safety net for so many small businesses at that time. Now, if you think about the pandemic, it's abated, but e-commerce continues to grow. And here's a quick stat to show that point. So in 2024, global e-commerce retail sales was $6 trillion. And by 2028, that's expected to grow to $8 trillion. So e-commerce is a trend that is definitely here to stay. And so we are proud to say that we've been able to continue to grow the FedEx e-commerce learning lab to support the continuing efforts of getting more small businesses online. So to take that and to really talk about what it is that the FedEx e-commerce learning lab provides, when we built this program, we decided that a multidimensional approach was really important. So by that, I mean we have online training modules that we offer to small businesses for free, and they're available 24/7, 365 that small businesses can do whenever they want to in their own time. A second component that we have that we're really proud of and continuing to grow is a Master E-commerce webinar series. We do a 4-part series every year. It kicks off today, actually, for this year, and it runs through February. And again, that's a free resource for small businesses. We have FedEx e-commerce experts who join on a variety of topics, along with AOF business coaches. And that's another opportunity to get small businesses who don't really have time to do an intensive cohort experience, but to give them some quick tools and tricks to help them with their e-commerce journey. The third aspect of the program, and is really foundational to the work that we do, is called the Beginners Cohort. And this is a very high-touch program that provides training, mentorship, coaching, a lot of technical assistance to e-commerce, around e-commerce to small businesses who are really in that beginning stage, who want to develop or expand their e-commerce presence. So those are really the 3 facets that we focus on. I don't know if Meredith has anything to add.
So Meredith, how does this fit into your mission as a nonprofit, and what partnership traits were you looking for when you found FedEx as a program partner?
Yeah, well, to be blunt, it fits perfectly into what we are always trying to do. As I mentioned before, AOF's mission is our small business members' success. And this program is a fantastic example of the collaboration that can happen when a long-standing partner like FedEx is creative with us and builds trust with us and can allow us to do what we really seek to do every day, which is remain adaptable in the same way that our small business owners have to be so nimble and adaptable to the shifting business ecosystem around them. We want to remain responsive and relevant to their needs. And this partnership is just such a great example of FedEx's team is always right out in front with us, anticipating trends, helping us understand the landscape, and really building and shaping programming that's very relevant to those needs. As Julia mentioned, at the time when we built this program, needs were looking a certain type of way because of the external context, and even as they evolve, we really remain as relevant and useful to our customers as we can.
Great. Both of you mentioned some key things. You talked about the relevance of the programs. Julia, you touched on the importance of meeting the small businesses and entrepreneurs where they were, some earlier stages of their e-commerce journey, some further along. So I think it's really important to acknowledge the brilliance of that approach. So let's talk about the numbers. How many small businesses do you think you're reaching?
Nearly 7,000 small business owners have been served by the FedEx e-commerce learning lab since it launched in 2021.
Oh, wow. Okay. And what metrics matter most to each of your organizations when you're thinking about success and measuring impact? So Julia, let's start with you.
Sure. So some of the things I think most practitioners that are in our field, like we talk about those short-term impacts or outputs, and then the longer-term impacts that are really difficult in many ways to measure. So the easy ones for this type of program is, as Meredith mentioned, the number of businesses served. We look at the number of businesses that attend webinars. Every year we do have a cohort. It varies between like 80 and 100 small businesses who are able to participate in that. We look at the types of participation. For instance, the webinar series, we're looking at who's joining. We do surveying to get their feedback on their experience. We look at Net Promoter Score. So those are a variety of the simple, easier to measure metrics that we focus on. What we've really been building towards for the past couple of years is those longer term impacts, the ones that really show that we're driving change, real change in communities. And those would be things like revenue increase from the small businesses who are participating in the program, whether they're able to hire additional employees. If their business is growing, then they may be hiring, and that supports communities. And then the other thing that's challenging about that, at least when I started in this role in 2023, we were only funding AOF on an annual basis. So I know that's often a big conversation that we have in the practice is, do you do annual grants, do you do multi-year grants? And it was really clear to me at the time that we had to transition to a multi-year relationship if we were really going to be able to measure some of those longer term impacts. To really see, if you take a training course today, you're not going to see revenue growth tomorrow. It's really 6 months, 12 months, 2 years down the line that you're going to see those longer term impacts start to take shape. But then the one that really gets me excited and why I come to work every morning is not so much the quantitative, but it's those qualitative things that we're measuring and we're hearing about. And those are the stories from the small business owners that have participated in the program. And I know we're going to talk about that more in a moment.
Thank you. Okay, and what about you, Meredith?
I think Julia covered it perfectly. Another example of how we're so aligned as partners is we really think about how we're going to define success and impact together as we created this program. We really categorize the types of metrics that Julia mentioned into 3 broad categories to help us sort of organize our thinking. So the first being reach and scale, because AOF's mission is to unlock economic opportunity at a systemic level. So we do really care about that reach and that scale. The second being the quality of the experience right in the moment. Does the business owner feel engaged and feel like they're getting something useful? So those types of metrics that Julia mentioned around NPS and sort of immediate survey feedback. And then those longer term business outcomes that are more quantitative that help us really understand the economic and community impact we're having.
Great. Now, this question is for both of you. What does it take to build a trust-based, long-standing partnership between a corporation and a nonprofit, especially one that is as high touch as this one? And how did you build the case to get leadership in both your organizations when launching these partnerships? So how did you get leadership on board?
Well, I think Shannon really talked about this quite a lot last night during the Citizens Awards, and that is aligning your citizenship programs with your strategic priorities as a company. I think if you are thoughtful about the way you do that and do it well, the leadership buy-in should be there because the case is clear. So for us, small businesses are a critical customer segment. They are our bread and butter. We work with millions of small business customers. So the opportunity to support them, especially when we launched the program, was crystal clear. I think the other thing, though, is when I joined in this role, I did hear something that made me pause. And one of our senior leaders said, this is a really expensive program to only reach 100 small businesses a year. And I thought, like, we're not reaching 100 small businesses a year. That's just one aspect of the program. So I realized at the time we didn't have a buy-in challenge. We had a messaging challenge. And so I started thinking about how we were messaging the program. And I stopped relying so much on the beginners cohort, which is really our most expensive piece of the program, and talking about how we were reaching other small business customers through the program. So that shift in the buy-in needed to be from the total program and not just one aspect of the program was something I started focusing quite a bit on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think having a champion like a Julia is really fantastic. From the nonprofit perspective, we do our very best to make that process of making the case as easy as possible. So we seek certainly to align all of our social impact achievement with the business outcomes of our partners and make it make perfect sense. So as Julia was mentioning, it just feels like a no-brainer. We're essentially serving the same customer segment. So we do our best to be really thoughtful partners and putting that best foot forward. But building this multi-year relationship, I mean, Julia and I talk all the time. Like, we just trust each other. Building that relationship, as we've been talking about here for the past 2 days, I think is just so critical.
Wonderful. And I understand you have a special story in particular you'd like to share today. So let's hear all about Dr. Mickey. Julia, do you want, or Meredith?
Meredith, start.
All right.
Yes. So this is my favorite thing to do, which is to talk about the small business owners we serve. Dr. Penny Mickey and her husband Kenneth started Mickey's Popcorn in 2019. And after her career in higher education and in government, she was really ready to jump into entrepreneurship, not not only to boost her retirement savings, but more importantly to her, she was excited to give back to her community in Memphis, Tennessee. So alongside Mickey's Popcorn, she started a nonprofit called the Gratis Project, which focuses on workforce development and training programs for domestic violence survivors and for disadvantaged youth in and around Memphis. So those community members who are part of that program are integral to the creation and the packaging and the selling of Mickey's Popcorn. And Dr. Penny is a 2-time graduate of the FedEx e-commerce learning lab. She really learned a lot about the differentiated needs of her business, from the customer-facing aspects to the back-end operational needs as the business continued to grow. So now she does have a strong e-commerce presence, but the Learning Lab really helped her assess the business model in its entirety. And so as she is able to continue to grow, building new contracts, new other growth opportunities, not only are her business outcomes increasing, but she's deepening that community impact that she's having through the workforce development program. And I just think Penny is such a phenomenal example of the power of entrepreneurs in our communities. She doesn't stop there with the Gratis Project, which is phenomenal and impressive in itself, but she also comes back to the FedEx e-commerce learning lab now as a graduate to mentor and share her firsthand expertise with the business owners who are going through the program today. So we just love our partnership with Penny. We feel so lucky that she found us and that she participated in our program. And as her business continues to grow, you can find Mickey's Popcorn in 50 hotels across the United States. She's in Publix and Kroger grocery stores across the Southeast, and there's some popcorn on your tables right now, so you should definitely have a try. In particular, there's a special new flavor. The tequila caramel is in recognition of October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so it's very close to the mission and focus of both the nonprofit and of the business itself.
Okay, so I don't know if some of you have already started your, your popcorn. But thank you so much for sharing the story of Dr. Mickey, but also the products, and we hope you all are able to indulge throughout the day. All right, so now that your partnership is off the ground and has some great successes behind it, what's next for FedEx and AOF?
Yeah, well, next spring, the FedEx e-commerce learning lab will grow once again. We're going to launch a 4th component of this program that will aim to support small businesses that are established and that are really ready to grow to the next level through e-commerce. And we're so excited to be able to grow the program in this way. We're broadening the spectrum of small business owners that we're able to support from that early development stage all the way through pretty significant economic and community impact.
And I will just say, I spend a lot of my time, I sit within the marketing and communications organization at FedEx, so I spend a lot of my time thinking about how I can reach out to my business peers and really sell the program and to help them understand how we can meet their business objectives through community support. And I feel like our work has come a really long way from 2 decades ago when, it was kind of felt dirty to try to combine your what you were doing in citizenship and philanthropy with your business. But that is wholly a goal of ours. We want our small business customers, our FedEx customers, to know about this program, to be able to sign up to participate in webinars. So a lot of my time is spent storytelling and meeting with my marketing and sales and communications colleagues to get them to promote the program to their audiences.
Wonderful. Now, this is almost all the time we have today. Are there any final words you want to leave our audience with today?
Well, I will just say, this conference has been phenomenal. I think all the speakers have been so wonderful, but I will leave you with something that Chris Gardner said yesterday that I wholly believe in, and that is, no matter what you want to be the best. And I think about all of us sitting in this room today, and we are all trying to be the best CSR practitioners, the best at building community cohorts and coalitions to meet a critical community need. And to me, how lucky are we? I love what I get to do, and I wake up energized and excited every day to get to do this job. It's a career, it's a passion, and I feel really lucky and blessed that I found this work. And I know many of you feel the same way.
Thank you, Julia. Meredith?
Yeah, I think my advice for nonprofits and for corporates who are looking to partner for impact is to keep your customer at the center of everything you do. That's smart business, that's smart for impact, and we really see our small business members as our North Star in everything that we try to create. So I would just remember to keep the reason why you're doing it, keep the person you're serving at the center of all of your endeavors.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please thank Meredith and Julia. And thank you all.
Thank you.
Right, good morning. Great to be here with you all. Thank you so much. And I want to just say thank you to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation and my esteemed colleagues here on the panel who have incredible journeys and backgrounds I encourage you to look at. LinkedIn, you'll hear some of it here today. Purpose and collaboration are the foundation for social impact. Social impact that's rooted in shared vision and values, deep collaboration, and a willingness to shift the status quo to impact systems and change them. As Managing Director at Deloitte, I'm thrilled to moderate this conversation among philanthropy, business, and social entrepreneurs to see the impact of social entrepreneurship, workforce development. And we've seen firsthand the transformative potential and impact when these stakeholders come together to address complex health and economic challenges facing our communities. Now, our commitment to social impact is not just philanthropic or pro bono, but it's also about helping build a healthier and prosperous future for our people, for our collaborators, and for our communities. We strive to unlock innovative solutions bridge gaps in health, education, and workforce access through collaborations with intermediaries in our portfolio. And today's panel brings together voices from business, philanthropy, and social entrepreneurship. Together, we'll explore not only leading practices, but also key lessons and promising models that can help organizations like us drive meaningful change with our people, with our communities, and together it's a conversation that starts with collaboration, thrives on innovations, and can succeed when we deliver impact. So with that, I'd like to welcome Joanna, Hassan, and Jermaine to the stage here, and we'll start here with Hassan. I'll start with Joanna, and just introductions and what brings you to this work and connects you to it.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Joanna Burleson. I'm a managing director with Deloitte. I lead the Monitor Institute by Deloitte, which is our social impact practice within the firm. And what's brought me to this work is really twofold. One is, in some ways, my personal journey, which has been filled with a number of connected and not connected opportunities that put me in a position to work with amazing social entrepreneurs and organizations. What's kept me in this work and particularly focused on leading and collaborating with others outside of the firm across sectors is, and this is a topic I've already heard discussed a lot today, is the power of relationships, particularly cross-sector relationships. And I truly believe in the transformative power of those relationships to create really a world, particularly in this country, where every person can live a fulfilled and dignified life. So I'm wholly focused on that work, and I see that opportunity in my role at Deloitte today.
Great. Thank you, Joanna. Hudson?
Good morning, everybody. Hassan. I am a partner at New Profit, and we are a philanthropic intermediary. So we have the pleasure to work with amazing social entrepreneurs all across the country who are working to address some of the toughest social challenges that we face in our communities. We provide them with unrestricted capital, as well as strategic support and capacity building to be able to increase their impact and improve their financial sustainability. And over the past 25 years, we've been able to support over 250 social entrepreneurs, and I was actually one of them. So right before joining New Profit, I had the pleasure of collaborating with New Profit as a grantee. I had the pleasure to work with Joanna and her amazing team at the Monitor Institute by Deloitte, who supported me with some pro bono consulting in my work at that nonprofit. And now I get to do that work with incredible organizations in the mental and behavioral health space through our collaboration with the Deloitte Health Institute.
Great. Thank you, Hassan. German?
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. So my name is Germán Vergara. I'm the founder and CEO of Adapta. Before I tell you what Adapta is, maybe I'll tell you a little bit of a story about why I'm here. So if you think about the world today, and if we think about agricultural value chains, we have a system today that really compensates consumption and price. So it's interesting to know that farmers across the globe, everywhere in the globe, get about 5 to 15% of the final price. So when you go buy your vegetables, just think about that. Only 5 to 15% of the final price goes to a farmer. That's an amazing, that's the hardest work, and they only get that. So I started Adapta to actually create a bridge, because farmers need a lot of funding to actually adapt and become more resilient to the challenges today. And what we did is basically, I'm a banker myself, and I decided to create a bridge using technology between lenders and farmers. So if you think about lenders, I'm a lender. I always was very hesitant to lend to farmers. So my idea was using technology. So we use AI, we use satellite information, soil and water management science, and also regenerative agricultural practices. And we created, with the support of the Gates Foundation, a very cool risk management system that we use. We're quite active in Africa today and started to be active in Latin America. And all I want to say is I frankly could not be here without partnerships. I think partnerships made it all happen to us. We had a great partnership with the Gates Foundation, USAID, Accion, and recently AWS invited us to be part of their Cloud to Table initiative, which is an initiative to increase productivity and profits for farmers across the globe. So very pleased to do that. With Deloitte, I think Deloitte played a critical role in validating our strategy, our go-to-market strategy. And I think, Jay, more importantly, I think you also provided us an idea of what's going on in this market in terms of family farms, which is an issue of great interest to me. How do we actually help the 2 million family farms in this country? There's about 30,000 family farms that disappear every year, and that's the diversity of food we need in this country. So I think I'm really looking into that. So that came from you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Germán. And Deloitte Health Institute and Monitor, as part of our purpose commitment around workforce health and inclusive entrepreneurship, has really been thrilled to see the impact really driven by entrepreneurs and community-based organizations. And we thought long and hard about how to move this work forward. So Joanna, I want you to see if you could share some examples of how accelerators can help drive this work of social entrepreneurship and social impact forward, in both the public and private sectors.
Sure. Reflecting on this morning and thinking about, there are 3 significant ways I've seen our support and our collaboration in this space evolve over time. The first is a great example that we have with New Profit, which is an intermediary organization raising funds and also distributing those funds to social entrepreneurs, along with other support, right? Capacity building support, et cetera. And we've had a long-standing relationship with New Profit over 20 years of supporting across a number of dimensions. A second example would be collaborating with the private sector. For example, your involvement in the work that you've been involved with and being brought into the work with AWS and Deloitte, where we had, as a firm, both a relationship with one of our alliance partners, AWS, and a shared sense of purpose and mission for what we wanted to do together, and our ability to come together and create an accelerator to support social innovation around a number of issue areas. And then the third real important, I think, evolution is the notion of cross-sector collaboration in support of social innovation. And this is a role that will increasingly play, and I expect so many of you in the audience are seeing this happen as well, particularly as so many of the challenges in our country and the world are complex, they're messy, they're systemic, and they really require the collaboration across the private sector, the social sector, and the public sector. And so we've started to do more of that work in collaboration, particularly place-based work. We've been working quite deeply in both San Francisco and now in Boston, connected to an initiative called Yes Cities that particularly identifies an opportunity to bring together and support innovators to come in and help solve that challenge, supported by a cross-sector alliance. So those are some of the ways I've seen this evolve. And one thing as I was reflecting on, these all have a different flavor, they take different levels of engagement and time, but relationships are really important, and the time that it takes to develop relationships of trust, particularly as these ecosystems get bigger, it takes time and it takes trust. Second is really grounding in a shared sense of values and purpose becomes critically important with those that are engaged in the accelerator, who are coming together and investing, their time and their talent and their money. And then third is understanding the value that each party gets out of this relationship. And I think that's particularly important, where oftentimes, for example, with New Profit, we've always thought this isn't just us as a funder, right? Simply giving to New Profit. The value that we as a firm have gotten, the amount of learning that I've experienced working with New Profit over the years has been really phenomenal. So that understanding of the shared values and the value that each party gets out of the relationship is what I think sustains it over time and creates an environment for adaptation, for learning, and for evolution.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll learn more, I think, hear more about working with the intermediary, working directly with entrepreneurs. But Hassan, I think you've got a perspective on this from both angles. Can you provide examples of both the collaboration that helped expand workforce, but also your perspective on working with intermediaries and working to advance this work?
Absolutely. Social entrepreneurs, Jay, are very resourceful. So when we look at our portfolio of organizations that we've supported, we see a wide range of collaborations between the nonprofits as well as the business community that they are connected to. But maybe I'll lift up one example from our current cohort that actually is a result of a collaboration between New Profit and the Deloitte Health Institute. These are 8 organizations that we're currently supporting, each receiving $100,000 plus a year-long capacity building program to improve their financial sustainability, strengthen their teams, and accelerate their impact. And one of those organizations, Open Source Wellness, based in California, are an example of what they call a behavioral pharmacy. So what they noticed was that a lot of times doctors might prescribe you to move more, eat better, reduce your stress, spend some time in your community, but there's no place to go to fill that prescription, and they want it to be that place. So if you live in one of the communities that Open Source Wellness supports, you can actually go to their community, get access to individual as well as group-based coaching, and they have built that strong partnership with healthcare providers locally to provide that seamless experience. And because they're able to reimburse Medicaid for their services, they're able to serve a wide range of communities and are able to then recruit community members, train them on the open source model, and provide new career pathways for community members to support their model. So that's just one example of how Open Source Wellness really thinks deeply about collaborating with their local healthcare providers. But if I want to zoom back out again, Jay, and just think about our own partnership with Deloitte, maybe I'll lift up an example with the Monitor Institute. This year, as we heard this morning, many of our organizations, if not all, have just experienced a really, really challenging pace of change. So as they are leading their organizations, being able to know how to respond, how to prepare for different scenarios, was a challenge that we kept hearing from our entrepreneurs, and we were able to deliver a really, really deep training to all of our portfolio organizations by the Monetary Institute by Deloitte to teach scenario planning as well as financial modeling to be able to prepare for that reality.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up is when one of the areas you focused on, you Profit, is around mental health.
Yes.
And what we found is that there's an opportunity to be a catalyst when you bring others together. So when businesses come together, for example, in the second mental health cohort, you had several businesses to come together, so that extended the number of entrepreneurs that could be supported.
Absolutely.
So these collaborations matter.
Absolutely. It's been just such a joy to be able to see, especially our organizations focused on mental and behavioral health. Again, think very creatively about how to expand their impact. I'll share maybe quickly another example in Ohio, an organization led by an entrepreneur called Reem Ali, and she leads an organization called the Ohio School-Based Health Alliance. And what she's doing right now is partnering with school districts and hospitals across the state of Ohio to bring in health centers in schools so that young people and their caregivers can access a full range of health services without having to miss school, without having to miss work. So again, it's just our entrepreneurs teach us every day about new ways to collaborate with the community around them.
Thank you. Armand, in your work as a social entrepreneur, how have you seen technology drive impact on economic mobility, social innovation? We know technology is a strong enabler. Some of your learning and experience has been through that work?
Yeah, so I'm a banker actually, so I spent 26 years as a banker myself. And I frankly started Adapta because what I've seen the last 5 years, it's been mind-boggling. Technology is now allowing us to, frankly, combining complex data in a way that is very fast and simple. And I can actually provide, when I go to work with banks, I give them my risk management system, but what is more interesting, just imagine this. Before, giving a risk score is one thing, but giving solutions is another. And you would have to hire a group of consultants to actually bring and do the analysis and all that. I don't need to do that anymore. The idea is that I can actually, with the help of AWS, we've created our LLM is fed by our own knowledge on regenerative agriculture, and it's interesting how technology is now actually providing, in a matter of seconds, the solutions the farmers need to actually implement. So that has been a major shift. The other one that I'm actually quite excited is about satellite imaging. When I started my career many years ago at the World Bank, one satellite image was about $150, and the resolution was horrible. Today, that same image with a better resolution is only $5. So when you're looking at a bank and a bank has to do due diligence on a farm, you don't need to go to the farm anymore. $5 actually buys you an image that would tell you everything that is going on at that farm. And I think that's, to me, what technology has done in the last 5 years. So I'm actually very excited to see what the next 5 will take, but we're actually playing a lot with the help of AWS, with Anthropic, Claude, and Bedrock AI. So we're using a lot of this information to actually give us more and more information to our users.
Yep, thank you for sharing that. And what you bring up is also, how businesses and corporate citizenship approaches think about intermediaries. And so even with our work with AWS, it was because of some of the capabilities we had, and we could bring together. Similarly with New Profit. But Joanna, I think one of the questions that comes up is, how do you design and work with intermediaries versus maybe going another route? What are some of our
Mm-hmm.
learnings in that process that could be helpful to other businesses?
Yeah, I'll start with something I talked about earlier, which is starting from a foundation of building a relationship and trust. And with New Profit, and Deloitte has a number of relationships with other intermediaries who are supporting and investing in social entrepreneurship and organizations across our country. And over the years, what we've realized is one, going back to what we bring to the table and what our partners bring to the table, intermediaries are excellent at what they do in identifying, uplifting, and supporting social entrepreneurs who are those often the best suited to understand the nature of the problem that they are tackling versus Deloitte. And so recognizing, number one, the importance of that proximity and closeness to innovation on the ground is something that we don't necessarily have and we shouldn't necessarily be doing all the time. And so uplifting that and recognizing that value that a New Profit has to us, knowing that some of the issues that New Profit is supporting are really important to Deloitte as well. Second is, in some ways for a firm of our size, the ability to tap into a powerful network that an intermediary might have in the field. And that network is a network of organizations or social entrepreneurs, but also an extended network in the social sector, for example. Deloitte brings a really extensive network in the private sector, so many of you here, and that's something we bring to the table. But the proximity to the issues on the ground in the communities that are best served by those organizations has been something that we've benefited from significantly. And that learning then helps us shape and reshape and redesign our own purpose strategy around what's important to us and what's important to the communities where we work and where we live.
Yep, thank you. And I would come to Hassan and Herman about your experience. With AWS, there's now 40 social entrepreneurs that are part of that cohort. There's 16 or so in New Profit, but we've also had to think about curriculum. What are some of the areas that have, from a curriculum standpoint, capability, skill sets that have been helpful to you from collaborators? And it's also another way, when we think about skills-based volunteering in our people, it's a way to inspire purpose in our people because we get our people involved in this work and they see what social entrepreneurs are doing and it catalyzes ideas and innovation. So I'd love to hear from both of you your experience around that.
If I can, definitely, I think at least my experience has been a lot of it for me. I mean, I'm an experienced individual. I have a lot of years of experience, but what I really liked the most was the network. The ability to actually sit with different people that actually, I sat with some, when I joined Accion, and I remember Deloitte played a critical role with the Accion program, is to have and sitting with successful entrepreneurs that would actually guide you. I think to me that was of great benefit. But what I see, for example, where in places like Africa, where I worked a lot of the accelerators focus on the growth. And unfortunately, what you find is that many startups actually run out of cash very quickly. So the idea is to go back to business fundamentals, right? I think that's very critical, Jay, that we actually focus on helping social entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general to focus on the fundamentals because that'll lead you to actually growth, not the other way around. And a lot of the accelerators I see are focusing on growth, and you end up without cash within a few years, and that's it. You close. So I think that to me, it's a combination for me, and experience is more about network. For a more younger entrepreneur would be about the basics of running a business. Sometimes we forget that.
Absolutely. I love that point around business, about the fundamentals, Herman. When we think about curriculum at New Profit, our curriculum is centers on improving and the impact of the organizations, improving the financial sustainability of the organization, and then helping them strengthen healthy teams and cultures. And I can think of examples in all of these three areas where we have benefited from our collaboration with Deloitte. Maybe I'll share an active example happening right now. There's an organization in our cohort called Close Gap. They are a national edtech organization that partners with districts and schools to make sure that teachers can know when students are struggling and be able to provide relevant, bite-sized, just-in-time support for the young people. And right now, Rachel, the entrepreneur and the CEO of that organization, is partnering with a team of Deloitte consultants on her go-to-market strategy. That is not a capability that we have within New Profit, but just for her to have access to that pro bono consulting, very targeted capacity building through our relationship with Deloitte has just been instrumental and valuable. And I feel like that just relationship based on our complementary capabilities has been very, very valuable.
Great. Joanna, go ahead. Yeah.
Just following up on that, and this is both based upon Deloitte's experience, and I suspect both for many of you in the room and how you're thinking about your own partnerships and relationships that go across sectors. I think there's some parallels to board service here. Bear with me for a second. We often think about the role of a board member. I bet many of you sit on boards of your obligation to provide time, talent, treasury, and ties, that network. And a company can think about this in the same way. In what ways are you providing the time? In what ways are you providing talent, the capabilities that your company uniquely can bring to the table to support entrepreneurship? Obviously, treasury, when it makes sense. The hard dollars matter a lot in many ways. But the ties and the network and the unique network that you can bring and create to wrap around communities and organizations and entrepreneurs that need it most. And so that's that interesting alchemy that we can bring.
Great. I know we're running up on time. So the last word here, Hassan and Herman, what can businesses do to work with social entrepreneurs from your perspective? What's sort of the next step that they can take?
Well, I would say to many of you, I think there is, if you look at many of the US-based VCs that are in the, what they call them pre-seed or seeding ventures, VCs, there's a total movement. The market is moving to the later series, and it's leaving a whole gap, basically, for many social entrepreneurs. So I would say that's an area where many of you can actually play a critical role of filling that gap to help social entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in general to actually have that beginning. I think that's a real serious problem. And the other thing is keep it simple, because my own experience working with many of the likes of you is everybody has their own demand for information and requirements, and we're a simple startup, so it becomes very difficult to manage all that. So I think this is where having a joint initiative to actually simplify M&E work would be of great value to us.
Hassan, last word.
Happy to. I will say social entrepreneurs are running their own organizations, and so many of your strengths and capabilities as business leaders are so valuable to these social entrepreneurs. So let's talk relationship matters, and I think so many of these nonprofits would just really, really value and benefit from all of the expertise on your teams.
It's great. Thank you so much. And we're just thrilled to share some of these experiences with you and look forward to collaborating further. And just join me in a warm round of applause for our esteemed panelists here. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Eversole. I'm the president of Hiring Our Heroes, a program of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. For those of you who are not familiar with Hiring Our Heroes, we are a national grassroots organization that helps empower transitioning service members, veterans, and military spouses find meaningful careers. We've been working for well over 14 years now in this space and are now serving about 100,000 transitioning service members, veterans, and military spouses each and every year with a network of more than 3,000 employers. But enough about HOH. We'll talk about that a little bit more throughout this conversation. I'm really honored this morning to share the stage with another leader in the veteran space, Brigadier General Mike Eastman, who runs an organization called Onward Ops. Prior to his role as the executive director of Onward Ops, General Eastman has commanded troops in combat operations and also was a deputy commanding general at Fort Drum of the famed 10th Mountain Division. I can say the famed 10th Mountain Division, yes. So let's start, General Eastman. Tell me a little bit about Onward Ops and your mission.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. So Onward Ops is a nonprofit that runs a military transition support program. We started as a suicide prevention organization, but as the mission evolved over time, you realize that a small number of folks need a tremendous amount of help, but all of the population needs some amount of help to reach their potential in this next phase of their life. So we have a pretty simple model. We enroll them early before they get out of the military. We work with them for that last year of service. We screen them for risk and needs. We connect them to certified mentors in their destination communities, and then we share information, the federal level with the VA, at the local level with the state and the county, all in the sort of overall mission of ensuring that these great young men and women have an opportunity to succeed, having served their country. I think that's something that we owe them.
Yeah, well, and I think that insight's very valuable, and obviously as someone who has commanded young men and women in combat operations, you know them incredibly well based on your 30-year experience in the Army. Can you talk a little bit about transition, and why do you think soldiers and service members really struggle with transition?
Yeah, so we focus, we'd love to help every veteran, right? But we focus explicitly on those getting out of the military, roughly 200,000 a year, because we're losing them to suicide at rates almost 3 times higher than their civilian peers. The only distinguishing factor is that they served in uniform. But what we see is they confront a unique set of pressures that for many of the people in this room, you would probably not necessarily assume are pressures because you've already done this. These folks have joined the military generally out of high school or college, and as they take this uniform off, not only are they sort of struggling with where do I go in life and what is my purpose, but they are facing, every single one of them, homelessness because they don't have a place to live, unemployment, loss of medical coverage, loss of insurance, all the things that the military provides. And so there's a convergence of pressures on this population that can be addressed but are not being really adequately addressed by the system we have right now.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I mean, I would dig a little bit deeper as to what we've seen as well on bases, which is, you know, not only are most of these young men and women young and it's their first job after high school, but for many of them, they come from lower and middle income families where for many of them, when they decide to go to college, they'll be first generation college students. And so what we often see, to your point, is a lot of struggle with, I've been built up by the military to do these great things, now what? and I think that's particularly challenging for a lot of these young men and women that that first job is such an incredible experience. It can be feel a little bit of a letdown, kind of thinking about what's next and what can they do with those skill sets. I mean, what do you see when you deal with that transitioning population as to what their concerns are or what they're trying to really navigate in that post-military journey?
Yeah, so I mean, if you frame this in terms of employment, right, which is for every one of them a really important next step. It's really hard to succeed when you're unemployed, right? Not a revelation there. They have tremendous experience. They have been given, in many cases, responsibility far in advance of what you would expect a 22, 23, 24-year-old to have. But they also struggle with translating what they have done and what they bring to the workforce into a civilian vernacular. Then they compound that. We're seeing 50% of them want to do something completely unrelated to what they did in the military. We came into the military, I'm an artilleryman, right? There's not a big call for me in your world. So even as a flag officer, I'm generally translating a set of soft skills in terms of management, leadership, competence, responsibility, but the hard skills that often lead to an easier employment journey, in many cases for these young people are not there, or they are there, but they don't understand them in the same way that you do, so they struggle to articulate them.
Well, I think that's a fantastic lead in to really my next question, and that is these soft skills, these experiential skills that you talked about. Why are those so valuable to the 20th century workforce? Skills like you mentioned leadership, I'm going to throw in resiliency in there. What else do you see from this population, and why is it so valuable for the corporate leaders in this room?
Yeah, I'll answer it a little differently. When I counsel servicemen, we're up to 24,000 that we've served over the last 18 months or so. I counsel them that, yes, you have to do the work to put your resume and your best foot forward in terms of what you bring, but it's also articulating what do you bring to the culture of your organization that makes you a valued employee. They are trained to take accountability. They are trained to show up on time. They are trained to, take initiative. How do you articulate that, and how is that a fit with your potential employer to offset maybe you don't have the certifications or you're getting the certifications at this moment in time? I think all those things look, I was in the Army a long time, longer than I'd like to admit, to be honest. And it's always been to me that with the right team of people, you can accomplish almost anything. You may have great skills, but if the right team doesn't exist, then you still don't accomplish the mission.
That's right. And you hit on this thread about, they're trained, but let's also talk a little bit about the trainability and some of the credentials or skill sets on the margins that become critically important for these service members. We're certainly seeing in our space with tremendous support from companies like Google, who are helping to upskill this population with certain credentials. Obviously, there's a big shift with a focus on AI. How important is this trainability, the aspect of what young service members can bring, but also their willingness to learn new things?
Yeah, so everyone that serves in the military, regardless of the rank and regardless of the amount of time they spent, is in a constant training pipeline. They go to school, they serve. They go back to school, they serve. It's almost hardwired that they are going to learn new skills in preparation for their next step. So this is a very natural progression for them. I stopped counting the number of schools that I went to, honestly, because at some point I can't remember the other schools. But they're all in this sort of frame of mind. We're ready to learn. They've been asked to do things out of the ordinary. Trust me, there was no amount of schooling in the States that prepared my soldiers for that first campaign in Iraq, or the second, or the third, or the fourth, right? So the fact that I think it'd be very rare to find a service member that believes they have the answers, as opposed to very common to find the service member that acknowledges, I need to put some work in here to best prepare myself to understand this problem so that I can contribute.
Yeah, we see that each and every day on every base we go to as well, that service members want to adapt, they want to learn, but oftentimes they don't know where to start, and that creates particular challenges, especially for a population that is been trained to actually find answers, and it can be really challenging. I want to talk a little bit about purpose and how important purpose is to a military population, especially as they transition out, and what that loss of purpose can mean for some number of that veteran population.
Yeah, so there is sort of a common belief that taking off the uniform, there's a common belief that when you leave the military, you somehow, because you joined to serve this thing higher than yourself, when you take that away, you're going to struggle with understanding who you are and what you mean for the rest of your life. I think every service member goes through that to some extent. Now, if you peel that back, though, That's not uniformly the case. A lot of folks join the military for education benefits, or because they don't like where they live, or because it runs in the family. But those that have served longer absolutely do have an identity that has been defined by military service and service to the country that is then gone, right? And what do you replace that with? And I think in almost every case, when we counsel service members, it is about what is your next career. It is not about what is your next job. Right? What is your next career? And how do you see that giving back, whether it's to your community or to your customers or to the advancement of science? It doesn't really matter, but you have to frame it that way because they are seeking something to grab onto, and it can be a challenge.
It can be a real challenge. I mean, we've seen that, and for many of them, it may not just be about a paycheck, and it's a really crazy conversations sometimes have about with companies is that for many service members, it's more about the sense of community, it's more about the sense of purpose, and it's more about the sense of belonging to something bigger than themselves. And that's a tremendous attribute to our young men and women who are coming out of service, but it can be really a struggle for them. You've mentioned, and I mentioned it just briefly, how you work in communities and how important communities are to transitioning service members. Can you expand upon that a little bit?
So transition today is generally run at the federal level, right? You get a series of classes, you get a series of preparation, you file a disability, and these are all good sort of first order activities, but veterans live in communities. They don't live in Washington, D.C. by and large. And what we see is that the connection to the community can make or break a successful transition. It's as simple as that. So when you can inform a community that a veteran and their family is coming, they're seeking employment in these areas, they have kids or don't, they want to buy or rent, you can set the community up for a proactive reception, as opposed to when you don't have a community connection, the veteran and their family arrives and no one knows they are there. And often, all too often, if there is going to be a negative outcome, that's the start of that journey. I'll tell you, and I tell this, I speak a lot, and I speak to a lot of governors. And uniformly, when I ask governors, where do you generally meet your veterans? The sad story, the sad truth is the answer is always in the unemployment line, or in the emergency room, or in the worst case, under a bridge. And that is not, in my view, a function of the veteran not trying. That is a function of a system that does not allow the communities to know these folks are coming and work with them to succeed.
Yeah, and we see that too. And I think, unfortunately, that narrative is the one that people often grab a hold of, even though there are a lot of service members doing incredibly well post-transition. But unfortunately, we have a population that does, when they struggle, they can struggle very mightily, and it can create some real challenges. I'd love to get your sense on something that we've seen over the last couple of years. And I might as well just put these cards down because I haven't followed any of them anyway, just throw them out. How fragmented this transition process is at the federal government level, in the sense that you go to the 1 week of course, a transition course, and then all of a sudden you get your paperwork to get out of the military, and then you're on your own.
Yep.
And there is no connectivity between that service and that local community, and how challenging it is. To your point, you show up one day in your community after all these great things, and no one even knows you're there. Talk a little bit about that fragmentation, and tell me how you think we can start to solve some of that.
Yeah, I mean, our organization fundamentally exists because of that gap, right? The transition has structural problems with it. The transition process for the last 2 decades that I'm familiar with, because agencies don't talk to one another, Defense and Veterans Affairs, and vertically, the federal doesn't talk to the local. So at the center of this are the veterans, and then we scratch our head and wonder why they don't succeed. But I don't, in my heart, having done this for 3 years now, think that the solution lies in government. I think the solution lies in public-private partnerships that can accept the reality as it is, see the potential in this population, and help them to succeed. And layer on top of that, there are 45,000 registered veteran-serving organizations in this country. 45,000. That's one for every 3 veterans we produce each year. Right? So in the absence of collaboration, in the absence of some organizing scheme that leverages best of breed, you get confusion and people fall through the cracks.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, is that, you know, there are a lot of organizations, they're often well-intentioned, but they don't necessarily see both the national and the local landscape. We see that organizationally. And you know, from what we try to do is, and to your point about the data systems, even when somebody leaves the Department of Defense, that doesn't mean that information's even passed on to the Veterans Affairs folks. And so there is a massive data problem that we often see. But I know that organizations, serious organizations like Onward Ops, and certainly from the Hiring Our Heroes perspective, we're trying to work together at a macro level to solve these micro challenges. One such effort is on Face the Fight, that's been led by USAA and their commitment to help end veteran suicide. I know you're a coalition partner with Face the Fight. Can you talk a little bit about that effort, please?
Yeah, I mean, just very briefly, I think it's a real movement in the right direction. It brings in private companies and nonprofits working in collaboration rather than in competition to address, in their case, specifically veteran suicide, but more broadly, right, this is the sort of approach we need that stitches together effective programs bounded by metrics that lead to outcomes. Anecdotes are great. I love to tell a great story. Right? But anecdotes don't scale. It takes real work and partnership to get scale.
Yeah. And commitment and follow through and data integrity and all those things that when you start to look past the charity aspect of it, this isn't charitable work. This is about continuing to serve a population that can be incredibly valuable for our workforce and our communities if we give them the right tools and resources to succeed. I know we just have a couple of minutes left. What do you want this audience to know about Onward to Ops or our military community? So last word to you.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I would say this, right? We struggle as an organization, I think all of us in this space do, trying to straddle a focus on the really hard cases that need a lot of support and the opportunity and potential in the 98% of the population that are great future employees, great future neighbors, right? And how do you balance that? Because unfortunately, fundraising goes to the car crash. It doesn't go to the effort to uplift 98% of 200,000 folks a year. But neither here nor there, I will say this, right? Just to put this in context. In 20 years of war, adding both Iraq and Afghanistan, we lost 6,900 service members dead. In this country today, we lose 6,800 service members to suicide every year. We have to do better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you know, I want to just put an exclamation point about the car crash, because I think it's important. If you invest in the activities before the car crash, you can avoid the car crash in many instances. And I think we need to think more importantly about how do we avoid the car crash in the future and take the proactive steps to give the military community what they need. I haven't talked about it, so I only got 20 seconds. And don't forget about the military spouses and the entire family and the ecosystem that serve alongside their service member. They're equally important. I'm really honored today to host this conversation or moderate this conversation with you. I can't thank you enough for all the great work that Onward Ops is doing, and look forward to continuing our work together.
No, really. Thanks for having me. Hiring Our Heroes, awesome organization.
Thank you very much.
Well, we are going to talk a little bit about how to partner together before, during, and after disasters. My name is Rob Glenn. I'm the Vice President for Global Resilience at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. And this conference centers on the powerful premise of public-private partnerships, innovation, harnessing the power of business to do good in America and the world. And we're going to talk about that through the lens of the disaster landscape this morning. So some of you know, some of you don't, but for over 20 years, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation has really been active in helping prepare small businesses, helping prepare chambers, helping prepare communities for disasters, helping companies of all sizes navigate the uncertainty of response, and then also looking to how do we recover from disasters more efficiently, more effectively, and also faster. We do this by working across sectors. And so we have different businesses that are here today to talk about why they're interested in resilience, what their initiatives are, and then also what their vision is from a community standpoint, and also down to the household level, how do you create more ownership of your own destiny when it comes to your own financial preparedness or literacy? How do you stay connected to each other organizationally? And then also, how do you make sense of that given the amount of data that we're all witnessing in our lives today? Just a couple of things I want to share. There's a number of different research items that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation has done over the last couple of years. Two things that I'm most impressed about, some of the research we've done on preparedness. So when you think about the dollars that are spent on response, we really could be investing quite a bit more effectively ahead of the disasters. So what we found in the business case, the preparedness payoff report last year, is that for every dollar on average that's invested ahead of a disaster, you're going to realize a savings of $13 in a national average post-disaster. We also took a look this year in different kinds of economic modeling scenarios and different kinds of investments, different kinds of hazards, but on the average, not spending a dollar balloons to $33 in disaster cleanup cost and recovery and response cost. So the companies here are going to, I think, illuminate a little bit about what we can do ahead of the disaster and why it's important to have these relationships across multiple sectors during and after the disaster. So I'm joined today by Esri, Verizon, as well as Prudential. I'll turn it over to Crystal, Sarah, and then Cindy to introduce themselves. And as you're doing your introduction, just tell us a little bit about why this topic is so important to you and why resilience really matters for your companies and your organizations. Crystal?
Sure. So thank you so much for having me here, Rob. My name is Crystal Bergeman. I manage our disaster resilience program at Verizon, and just really pleased to be here to talk about our work in disaster resilience, and glad, Rob, that you brought up the research that the Chamber Foundation has done. I will say that those reports were absolutely eye-opening to our company, for sure, as we thought about how we want to be involved in this work. Verizon has always run to a crisis. That's actually in our credo, that we run to a crisis. We are there making sure that communities have connectivity, stay connected. Our frontline teams make sure that first responders, public safety agencies have what they need to respond in a crisis. That is something that is core to our DNA at Verizon. However, we took a step back and realized we can't just respond in the moment to a disaster for all the reasons Rob raised in terms of dollars and cents, in terms of community preparedness. There's so much more that we can be doing on the front end to prepare ourselves, our customers, but also just communities in general for disaster. And so in the last year, we've really launched our disaster resilience program, which takes a holistic approach, working with communities on the front end of a disaster, on preparedness, working with households on workshops and financial preparedness workshops, response, of course, and then long-term recovery, thinking about how can we make sure that the communities we serve and that we're a part of every day are able to bounce back and bounce forward after disaster. So really excited to be here and talk more about the work.
Sure.
Great. It's great to be with you all. My name is Sarah Kay. I lead the philanthropy and employee community engagement programs at Prudential. And we are celebrating our 150 years this year. And we were founded in Newark, New Jersey, and we're still headquartered there. And so place and community is still very important to us and part of the company's DNA. And we have a very big focus on advancing inclusive economic growth in our headquarters cities of Newark, New Jersey, but all of the other locations where we have business locations. And so we have a very big focus on disaster risk and management. That's a big core part of our philanthropic strategy. It's part of the company's also focus in the sense of making sure that people have the opportunity to achieve financial security. And we know with any kind of disaster or crisis that happens, everybody gets to the same rung in the sense of things are, whether it's your homes, your properties, or different assets are unfortunately undermined when a disaster strikes. And so we really look at it from everything that, similar to Verizon, of looking at preparedness, making sure that communities are putting in the proper infrastructure and systems in place. We support a number of organizations at an annual basis to make sure that they have the funds in hand when disasters, particularly as we are speaking right now with Hurricane Melissa, they have the funds ready at hand to deploy immediately, and then also looking at the recovery and redevelopment efforts as well too. And as Glenn talked about, Rob talked about all the things that have happened with making sure that when communities are prepared, the dollars saved on the back end have come in with all of this input and evidence base of making sure that communities are resilient and that we're providing all the proper infrastructure for that.
Great, Sarah. Well, thank you, Rob. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I'm Cindy Elliott with Esri. I'm responsible for the company's private sector kind of industry strategy and the convergence with corporate responsibility. And for those of you who are not familiar with Esri, an example of some of our work is on the screens around the room. We are a geospatial technology company. We have been working with both public, private, and nonprofit organizations for now 50 years and been curating and developing these authoritative data sets related to not only risks and threats, but other types of demographics and other type of scientific breakthroughs related to geospatial. And at Esri, we have a mission of helping the world be a more sustainable and resilient world. As these threats increase, as the use of our planet increase, how are we being more resilient as an individual, as an organization, as a community? And one thing to keep in mind is there's no silver bullet. There's no single formula that anyone or any organization can adopt to be more resilient. But we think of the more resilient organizations and individuals are, the less they experience the negative setbacks, the negative repercussions of a disaster or a threat, and it means that they're more resilient for the next one and the next one. So we really look forward to working with organizations like the Chamber Foundation and others to making sure this information is available and accessible and visual for organizations and individuals in their preparedness journey, since there is no one formula, but how do they kind of assemble the tools they need to be more resilient.
Well, thanks a lot for I think the overview of why it matters and how each of your organizations think about resilience, but more specifically, how do you support resilience within communities? There are different kinds of ways to invest. There are different kinds of ways to enable capability or build capacity at that community level. Can you share just a little bit about what does that building resilience aspect look like for each of your organizations? Crystal?
Sure. I will start. I talked a little bit about some of the work we do at the household level with preparedness workshops, with some of our national partners. But Verizon, we're a telecommunications company. We're also a technology company. And so starting with sort of our core business, thinking about technology, we thought, how can we make sure that we are making technology work for communities in ways that, especially for those communities who may not have access to it otherwise. And so we've really invested in technology solutions to resilience. So for example, we, in the last year, installed flood sensors, working with a startup company called Hi-Fi. They create these sort of sonar-based flood sensors. We installed them in New Orleans and then also in Chicago. And those flood sensors use our 5G network. They identify when flooding is happening and then report those floods at a very granular basis very quickly to city planners, city managers, who then make that available to the general public. So that's an example where we're helping technology work for communities. We're also, as part of that, developing sort of wraparound relationships with community organizations to understand from community members, where are those flood sensors needed? Where are they maybe overlooked previously? Where are those communities that haven't gotten that information before? And also working with community members to understand, what do you do with that data when you find out that there's flooding? How can you prepare for flooding? How can you prepare when you find out that the street is flooded? So those kinds of direct community engagements using trusted partners, tying in technology is a way that Verizon has really found a way to reach communities in a way that makes sense for our business model as well.
Great. Now, Sarah, I know that Prudential has a priority for ownership economy. Can you share a little bit about why that's important for community resilience?
Absolutely. So we think community resilience goes hand in hand with financial resilience, whether it's at the individual, household, or community level. And for us, that's really thinking about building an ownership economy where people have access to appreciating assets that actually build wealth for individuals. So it's one step above the financial stability, but actually participating in the wealth creation that has happened over the decades. And so for us, we're looking at home ownership. And when you're thinking about in a disaster scenario, it's really making sure that especially homeowners or those who haven't had access to that before, what are different alternatives when a disaster strikes? And so we've been supporting a few organizations that have been working on accessory dwelling units, which are like secondary home units on the home that are much more affordable. And so we're working with an organization, Prosperity Now, in LA after the LA wildfires to think about how do we get people access to ADUs right now as they will take years to build the homes that they lost during those wildfires. We also look at employee ownership. So how do we make sure that businesses that have employees and workers in that community have access to either equity stakes or ownership rights into that business? And so to make sure that jobs and commerce are there and stable. And we know through research that many organizations have done that employee-owned companies sustain or withstand shocks and emergencies in the economy better than others. And we also look at individual financial assets. We are a risk management insurance company, so of course life insurance and retirement securities are really important to make sure people have the emergency savings that they need to be able to prepare and recover from a disaster.
So what does it look like when you're looking at a map and there's so many different ways to see maps, and there's so many different organizations that are reflected in the complexity, right? You know, it's political lines, there's traditional lines, there's sometimes maps with no lines.
Or there's fire lines.
Or there's fire lines. So how does the capability of Esri really translate into building community resilience, understanding from an emergency management standpoint how important it is? But you're also looking at helping other industries really, I think, make sense of the situation through your tool. Can you share a little bit more?
Absolutely. And again, the maps you see here are reflecting data that's coming from, you see one that's FEMA in particular in the way they've created their indexes, sat imagery, and also just drought and just climate data sources that are coming from all over. And I want to thank my colleague Victoria Guidry, who developed these maps that you've seen throughout the course of 2 days. But the idea is that geographically, a place, and someone mentioned we're very place-centric, places kind of transcend a state, county, city, demographic line, and they really are about where things are happening. And I think a big part of where I mentioned Esri has this 50-year history of collecting place data, whether it's water, land, sea, how populations have shifted, how drought has shifted and changed over time, how economies have shifted over time, but not only one data point at a time, but the ability to curate this and share it in what we call a layering way, right, in a contextual way. But that data and those tools don't sit in a database. We have, again, that multi-decade history working with organizations nationally or maybe even internationally, such as the Red Cross, the World Health Organization, the Chamber of Commerce Foundation, so that we're seeing a whole picture and a big picture of what you see here, but then all the way down to the first responders of big cities, small cities, community engagement, so that data can be global and hyper-local at the same time. And I think, Rob, one of the big benefits we think about resilience is not only saying how are things right now, but how do we project or how do we model them? What's going to happen over 5 years if drought lines and severity don't shift? Where are wildfires moving in our country where they haven't been before because of heat index rise? So they're able to model those things so that before building or before other types of development activities happen, or the insured or uninsured are thinking about where they're going to be living, working, going to school, we know those risks and threats ahead of time. And that, I think, is the biggest first step in resilience, is knowing where things are going and using this data and this intelligence by those organizations to deliver that kind of valuable insights ahead of time.
So all three of you have touched in some way upon community and data over the last couple of minutes. So just maybe explore that just a little bit more about, as we become much more data oriented as a society, but also companies are definitely data oriented. We're trying to make sense of, we can rack up the statistics in terms of the billion-dollar disasters that are occurring more frequently and some of the other evidence-based, kind of approaches to building resilience. How do you balance, what the data is telling you, what maybe your intuition or gut is telling you, and then also some other pressures in terms of how you help prepare for, what's next in terms of a disaster resilience standpoint?
I'll jump in here again. That's a great question. There's so much data, there's so much technology, there's so much information out there that can help us make decisions. And it's so important to look at the data and what's the future data telling us. But it's really easy to get overwhelmed. And that's why it's really exciting to see some of the work that Esri is doing about visualizing data, because you have to turn that data into a story, because there's lots of, everybody in this room knows there's lots of priorities all the time, and preparing for something in advance that's not currently threatening you is a difficult decision. And so you need to take the data and turn it into a story or a connection or understanding somehow with the community in order to really break through all of those other pressures and other kinds of pulls on your time or pulls on a community's time, both kind of from the business angle, but also from the communities that you're working with. And so we like to use data and turn it into stories and visualizations as much as we can.
I agree with everything Crystal said. Well, one, all of the maps that you all have created is so incredibly important. And like Crystal said, being able to forecast and potentially predict something is happening. The data that U.S. Chamber and others have done in terms of what every dollar spent in disaster risk preparedness has saved on the back end was hugely important to us. That has been a core part of our disaster management strategy, but it's a hard sell internally when you're saying that something might happen. It could be next month or it could be in 10 years. But to be able to show that cost savings is really important to make the case internally, but also to community members about why they should care about making sure that they have the proper disaster communication processes, that their water sanitation systems are all there to make sure that if anything strikes. So just as Crystal said, we integrate the data with the storytelling, because at the end of the day, people do want to know what it means for that individual. But data, especially I think for all three of us, is incredibly important to make the case and tell the story of the impact.
I think what I'd add to that is that I think we all can, in anything that we're doing today, we have so much data, so much is coming at us. And so there are tools, I know Esri in particular has a disaster response portal that, of course, we deploy it in the cases of the hurricanes, in the case of the wildfires, and it's made available in real time to first responders and other crisis management organizations. And it's available to individuals, so and it's a free service that allows some of this data into the hands of the people who really need it. So how do we all transfer that valuable data source or resources, won't call it data, resources, into actionable insights to get started, either at the hyper-local or at a state or a national level. And I think that's important, is how do we find and access those tools and resources. And I know the Chamber Foundation in particular, in your program for business resilience, Rob, is working on those repeatable frameworks and tools that allow this to be much more widespread in adoption versus everybody we find now everybody trying to build their own. And then if they're building their own, are they interchangeable? Some of our best stories of success is when CSX Rail and Red Cross in the Wayback Machine, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, during one of the hurricanes, were able to use their data collectively so they didn't have to, they saw more quickly, if that makes sense. So this interchangeability of everybody gaining a shared vision of what's happening or shared view, I think that's one of the most critical, both in a resilience and a response, right?
So real quick, I know each of you have probably everyone's interested in takeaways and tools that they can immediately, I think apply. So really quickly, and then maybe Cindy, we'll start with you because you just mentioned a couple of tools.
Right.
Just down the line, are there some specific tools or resources that you want to make this group aware of before we conclude the panel?
So I'd really stress again the DRP, the Esri Disaster Response Portal. Although it's activated all the time, especially for emergencies, there are some great templates and tools that organizations, because again, there's no silver bullet, there's no single formula. It's really important just to understand where are you in your organization or your household on the journey of resilience. So those are there, and it'll help you find resources in your local community that pertain to your interest level and what you're doing. And I'd say the other takeaway, not a tool per se, is that the mindset shift from being prepared for disaster and being prepared for resilience is a mindset shift. The data and the tools, they're out there, but helping that mindset shift and understanding, especially as a business, resilience is a business value, right? There's hard ROI dollars to being more resilient than being disaster ready. So that would be one of my key takeaways.
Thanks.
I'll just add, because there are so many disasters and crises now happening in the world every day, and so having a strong framework internally, because we have a number of partners that we support, as I mentioned, on an annual basis, just so that they have the funds ready at will. But then we have a framework that looks at, what's the overall impact of the disaster, what's our business presence, what's the capacity of local organizations on the ground, and then ultimately what's the economic situation, whether it's more lower income, to then decide if we're going to provide more dollars to these disasters and for the recovery and redevelopment efforts. So I think that's really important. And I know, amongst colleagues as well, too, we've always talked about, we've all created a disaster framework, but we now need to think about humanitarian crises, right, because that doesn't necessarily fall into the natural disasters that we've all considered. And we've gotten feedback from our employees when we do respond to certain humanitarian crises versus not. And so and having associations like U.S. Chamber or other organizations like American Red Cross and UNICEF that bring companies and foundations together to talk about that, I think is incredibly important. And then, in terms of the takeaways, just really making sure that you are looking at the economic situation of the community that's been impacted on how do you build their financial resilience, because I think you all know the stats out there, 60% of Americans don't even have $500 in emergency savings. So if a disaster strikes, we are completely at the bottom of the rung.
I agree with everything that my fellow panelists said, and there's lots of tools and resources out there. I would just say that planning is so important. So from the individual level, the household level, community level, to the corporation level, and beyond, just understanding what are the risks, what are the hazards, what are the vulnerabilities to those risks and hazards that you have, either as an individual, a corporation, a community, and make a plan. So what's that plan? Who are you going to reach out to? What are your customers going to do? What are your loved ones going to do? What are your community members going to do? The most important thing is just to use all these resources and make a plan going forward.
So as we're rounding out, in May of next year, we're planning on holding our next Building Resilience Conference. This started almost 20 years ago, and it really focused on really connecting the public and the private sectors together, which I think now we know we really all are in this together. So reflecting on Hillary's comments, yesterday and taking a look forward, what will it take to become more resilient maybe over the next 250 years? Maybe we don't want to think that all the way through, but over the next year, when we do assemble here again, talking about disasters before, during, and after, and so many different ways to work together, what do you think should be on that agenda?
It's just partnerships. You can't do it alone. We've all got to work together. Corporations have to work together. Communities have to work together. Nonprofits, partnerships.
I'll say really quickly, financial resilience and AI.
I would say same thing. I think the partnerships and the collaboration so that the right service is being provided by the right provider in the right time. It's across the board. The partnerships make that happen.
Well, thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you, Crystal, for your time. And I also just wanted to flag, if you've been tracking the news, and I think it was already just mentioned, on this panel, Hurricane Melissa is making its way through the Caribbean, hit Jamaica last night. It's really a record-setting system. And so we're going to be hosting a coordination call with the State Department, U.S. Southcom, as well as UN OCHA, and also the Caribbean Disaster and Emergency Management Agency. So if you're interested in that, I think that there's a QR code behind me. If there is not, then just email, True Emergency Management Resilience terms. If there is not, just email resilience@uschamber.com, and we'll be sure to get you registered. But thanks again for being
Thanks,
here.
Rob.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You go that way?
And we are back in the briefing center. I'm joined this time with J-Bot and Julia Chakosky, and I have a couple questions I want to ask. First, I've been asking everybody their impression so far of the event. So, Jay, I want to start with you. Impression so far, Business Solves. What do you think? What have you heard that you like?
Joseph, thank you. It's great to be here with Julia. And for me, it's inspiring. The creativity, the stories of courage, the collaboration that is shared just demonstrates that when businesses lead with purpose, they make such a tremendous impact for communities and their people.
That's great. And Julie, what about you?
I will say this conference has been fast moving. I think sometimes you go to a conference and it seems like by day 2 you are like, okay, let's wrap it up. But this one, I feel like because the topics have all been very interesting and on a wide variety of different areas of community support. So you might hear a topic on health, or we just heard disaster relief, small business support, early childhood development. I think that's kept it really interesting.
That's great. Now, I want to ask both of you this. Julia, I'll come back to you.
Okay.
How does investing in entrepreneurs and small businesses support your company's purpose and values?
Sure. So our purpose as a business is connecting people and possibilities around the world. So you think about FedEx, you think about our purpose, it's to move packages. Well, really it's the connection between people and their dreams that is what we're really about. And our mission is aligned to that. So we want to make supply chains smarter for everyone. And something that I heard yesterday, during one of the conversations, I think it was Chris Gardner that said it best, is you're competing now in the world against not people necessarily in your own backyard, but around the world. And we hope to do that for small businesses and help them compete effectively with people around the world.
That's great. Jay, same question?
Yeah, well, I think Julia said it well in terms of small businesses and how they are an engine. And for us, that's one example that's through social entrepreneurship. And so with purpose, we think of that as an opportunity to drive impact that matters. And that's just not a statement, but it's a responsibility. It's a responsibility that we take on for our people, with shared values with our clients and with the communities we work and serve in. And I think that what we see is that this is an opportunity to bring new ideas to life, help them get footing, help them make a difference for the communities that they're involved in. And we say that growth gives momentum and purpose gives direction. And that is so critically important for the work we do in driving social impact. And so we're excited about that, and we're learning, and we're so grateful to be able to share that learning with others. And the social entrepreneurs teach us so much in terms of how we can show up in a really impactful way with collaborators and with communities and with organizations that we work with.
That's great. Well, thank you both for your participation today in sessions, and then also taking a couple minutes to chat with me.
Absolutely, Joe. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Joe.
And we're going to take a break, and sessions will start back in the main hall at 11:30.
Please take your seats. Our program will begin again shortly. Please silence all mobile devices and enjoy the show.
Monitor. Okay. And you want
Good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to join you today to host an important conversation about upskilling. My name is Nikki Da Silva, and I serve as one of our senior directors for programs and policy at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. You might have also seen me running around directing you in different places throughout yesterday, so thank you. Thank you for being open to that and for being here again today. My primary focus at the foundation is working on our talent pipeline management initiative, which is our employer-led, data-driven effort to helping build high-performing talent pipelines. So I'm joined today by both Lydia and Wes, who are going to talk to us a little bit about what their organizations are doing. So if I could start with Lydia, if you could tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. First of all, sorry I can't be with you in person. I'd love to be. I'm recovering from COVID, and I don't think any of you would want me to be there today. I am Lydia Logan. I'm the Vice President for Global Education and Workforce Development at IBM in our Corporate Social Responsibility division. I work to provide our free programs externally around the world. We have a commitment to skill 30 million people by 2030 and 2 million globally in AI, but another 2 million in the United States in AI. The primary way we're doing that is with our Skills Build program, which offers both workplace and technology skilling. We really believe you need both of those in order to be successful in the workplace. I know we'll be getting into that a little bit more with the panel, but thank you so much.
And Wes?
Sure, thanks, Nikki. Wes Parham, Vice President of Public Affairs for Pinnacle Assurance. Pinnacle is a workers' compensation specialist headquartered in Denver, was chartered 110 years ago by our state, and we operate as a member-owned company today and is benchmarked in the top 2% of property casualty carriers in the country, so we're proud of that. But back home, Pinnacle is one of our state's flagship civic and workforce development leaders, which is fitting for us because workforce is what we do as a company, but it's also our passion. And we really appreciate the recognition of this foundation for those efforts last year. I will also say that the workforce topic is a great fit for me personally. Throughout my career path and my various affiliations with the state chamber, a group called Colorado Succeeds, which is a coalition of industry leaders that are tactfully, in a collaborative way, pushing on education reform, also on a state commission to champion career-connected learning, and on my kids' school district foundation. I'm just a workforce guy, so really happy to be here.
Well, thank you both for being here for this conversation. As we know, the landscape of work is changing faster than ever. So I'm curious, from your unique vantage points, both IBM's global reach and Pinnacle's local focus in the insurance space, what do you think is the single greatest driver for the need for upskilling, and how is your company responding to that? And Lydia, I'd like to start with you.
Sure. So what we're seeing now, if you look at some of the recent reports that have come out, either the jobs report from the World Economic Forum or Canaries in the Coal Mine from Stanford, and others that are recent, we see the impact that AI is starting to have on the workforce. IBM's Institute for Business Values did a survey of CEOs that showed they believe that up to 75% of their workforce will need upskilling as a result of AI's impact on the workforce over the next 3 years. And so through multiple efforts at IBM, we are working to meet that need. We do it both internally at IBM for IBMers through things like our Watson X Challenge, where we have to learn our own technology and work in teams to figure out ways to become more productive and apply that technology, or the kinds of things that we're doing externally through Skills Build, whether they are for adult learners or the work that we're doing with universities or with high schools. We have challenges, we have upskilling opportunities for university professors and system leaders. We're working with statewide organizations on both planning, but also the programmatic elements. Making sure that from an individual standpoint, whether it's around productivity or an organizational standpoint for operations and administration, that the upskilling that needs to happen and the transformation with AI is something that everyone has access to. Not only the largest companies like IBM who have these big initiatives, but that we're also able to provide that through our corporate social responsibility efforts and others to small and medium-sized businesses or other nonprofits, school districts, and other kinds of organizations that need to make sure their employees and their constituents have the upskilling opportunities that they need.
Great, thanks. How about from you, Wes?
Yeah, I think all of that's right, Lydia. And I'm going to come at this more from an anecdotal standpoint as the general business guy, and then talk more about the how with Pinnacle and the general business community in a minute. But I want to level set something. And I'm coming at this, again, as a business guy and a fan of higher education. Higher education for me opened doors that I didn't even know existed. I feel the same way about our K-12 system. Yeah. I'm on my kids' district foundation for the same reason. But let's level set on what we're asking students today. 17 and 18-year-old kids, trends that matter. We're asking them to invest $30,000 a year, money that they don't yet have, to go study Shakespearean literature to become a business or a finance major, in the hopes that they'll pay that off and then be an active contributor in our housing market by their early to mid-30s. Anybody in this room want to guess what the average home price is in the state of Colorado? It's the mid 500s to 600s. What the heck are we doing? And here's the trend that matters. Kids and their parents are voting with their feet on this. And that's why so many employers are moving to skills-based hiring. That Pinnacle is, state of Colorado itself is, as a major employer. But there's a lot of opportunity in that, because I know that there's a lot of friction between education and business, a lot of finger pointing. We found in our experience that if we collaborate together, educators agree with us. They also want what's in the best interest of our young people and future leaders in our community and in our economy. And I think that there's a generational opportunity for business to define what skills-based hiring looks like as the nexus between K-12 higher education and our economy.
I'd love to dive into that deeper, but first, Lydia, you mentioned a few things, including one of IBM's big goals around skilling 30 million people by 2030 with a significant focus on AI. Could you talk a little bit more about your P-Tech program and your skills build models and how that helps address both the needs for broad-based and specialized skills? And how are those programs really helping prepare people for the jobs of the future?
Sure. So our P-Tech model is something we started about 13 years ago, and it has really transformed. It's something we started, rolled out, and then it's been taken up by states across the country. It's really an early college model, a pathways program. We took that, leveraged it, and then really expanded Skills Build globally. which is online learning. We offer it through partners and also directly for people who are interested in coming and learning for free. We really believe you need that combination, the combination of technical skills, whether they're AI specific or AI adjacent, things like understanding data analytics, cybersecurity, and applications, everything from prompt engineering and how to apply for AI for productivity, generative AI, predictive AI, and other forms. And then those workplace skills, right? The more that we see portions of jobs becoming automated as a result of AI, we'll be leaning much more heavily on human skills. Understanding good project management, collaboration, communication, design thinking, those things that people are uniquely good at doing. And so we offer both. But I think one of the things to add on about skills-based hiring is IBM eliminated the 4-year degree requirement from the majority of our US jobs posting quite some time ago. And we did it because our CEO believes that talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not.
Yeah.
And so having that 4-year degree requirement as a barrier for people who are capable of doing the job, but just may not have earned that degree for all the reasons we know people go to college and for some reasons have to step out. Maybe or maybe not, they come back. They learn on the job when they're working. They learn in many other ways. So being able to show that you can do the job and not just that you have had the job are really important. This need for our training programs to have not just the learning, but also the applied components so that students, whether you're in college, whether you're a learner in an adult workforce program, have some component that allows you to apply what you've learned, demonstrate it, put it in some sort of a portfolio that you can share with an employer, that you can share with a higher education institution to show your skills and abilities and your knowledge. It's no longer just a degree, right? It's not just the piece of paper you earn after 4 years. You learn along the way. We believe in tying micro-credentials as a way to demonstrate what you've learned in increments so that you have something to show beyond your degree or in addition to your degree. And we don't think it has to be an either or. We work with a lot of universities that are now integrating digital credentials and pathways into the degree programs so that students are both getting that employer-recognized credential on their way to earning a degree. And so I think we need to look at the different kinds of pathways and the different signals that employers are looking for, but it really is that applied learning. And I think we'll see more and more of that, especially as we see the acceleration of change in jobs, particularly those jobs that we had called, entry-level roles. As those transition quickly, we'll see more of an emphasis on people earning credentials that signify what they're able to do so that they are prepared for employment.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that phrase, talent is everywhere, opportunity is not. And one of your colleagues, Ben Gehrig, said in a meeting I was with him recently, college might not be for everyone, but college credit is. And so this idea of the micro-credentials, other opportunities in which people can continue to build their skill set is really important. So I want to talk a little bit about how Pinnacle is doing this. You guys took a bit of a unique approach for talent development and building one of the largest youth apprenticeship programs in the state of Colorado, which has become a national model. So could you elaborate a little bit about why Pinnacle decided to focus on attracting and upskilling young talent, and what have been some of the key successes and key challenges within this initiative?
Thank you, and that's a great segue from where Lydia was heading with this. It's Pinnacle's philosophy that, of course, we do well when those that we serve do well. We don't want to just be in those rooms. We want to be working alongside the leaders in those rooms to really understand what talent and opportunity looks like. And so Pinnacle's apprenticeship program was inspired by a leadership exchange visit over to Switzerland in 2017, to the motherland of all apprenticeship programs. And I think civic leaders in our state recognize that
iLab.
Our education system, of course, looks much different in the United States than it does in European models, but still are there some elements that we could bring home in the world of career-connected learning, specifically apprenticeship programs, to solve for, at the time, a very pronounced shortage of workforce. It was a 2-to-1 shortage in Colorado overall. For Pinnacle specifically, we had an aging workforce. This was pre-pandemic. And more to the point, when we all grow up to be things, we want to be nurses and doctors and lawyers and those kind of things. We don't necessarily grow up to work in insurance or even know what a workers' compensation company is or what an underwriter does. I still don't know what they do, but God bless them. So we got to work, and we partnered with an intermediary, CareerWise USA, who has been a tremendous partner from day one to really engage youth in our communities who weren't looking at college right away, and they didn't quite know what that next step was. Well, hey, come aboard. Let's earn a competitive wage. These are U.S. DOL registered apprenticeship programs, so there's transferable credentials that can go across the economy. We can also introduce you to our partners in higher education, if that's a path that you want to pursue. In the meantime, we're a pretty cool company to work for, and it's been wildly successful. As you mentioned, it's grown into the largest youth apprenticeship program in the state, which is very unique for an insurance company, obviously. Our team has worked with 18 high schools across 6 different school districts, 6 or 7 higher education partners, and more than 85% of the apprentices that we hire full-time represent BIPOC communities. And so it's a very unique way to connect with our community in that way. I will also say that we've learned more as an organization about the muscle, and I'll coin that term with one of our HR leaders in the room. We've developed a muscle to understand change and adaptability based on our hands-on working with an apprenticeship program.
Amazing. You mentioned earlier, and I think this has kind of come through in both of your remarks, there's a lot of need for collaboration in order for these things to be successful, right? 30 million people, largest apprenticeship program in the state. So I'll start with you, Wes. From a regional perspective, you're engaged with several business-led coalitions who prioritize public policy to support this work. How important is business engagement in building a strong workforce policy, and what are some examples of where that kind of collaborative effort has really been successful in pushing along some of these initiatives?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll start with Colorado Succeeds, and Lydia, you and Nikki both have experience in working directly with Colorado Succeeds, and appreciate that. We're beyond the fluff and stuff in the public policy world. We're leaning in to codify things like ISCED standards, which are unique here, to support skills-based hiring. And in the spirit of collaboration, it's actually our state, Department of Higher Education that is helping to develop what that looks like, which is very unique. We're codifying longitudinal data systems to not only track education progress, but to track experience progress throughout a learner's entire career, which also helps employers identify where the skills clusters are at and where the gaps could be in the future to focus our efforts. Our state Chamber of Commerce is doing a wonderful job because this gets pretty noisy pretty quick, right? Part of getting the employer's attention is storytelling.
Right.
And we've got a lot of great stars in the constellation. We need to pull those stars closer together so that it's, I heard the word this morning, simple, more simple for employers to understand. And so the state chamber is taking the conversation to our communities in those regions with a homegrown talent philosophy, right? So a cross-section of industries might look different in northern Colorado than parts of southern Colorado or the western slope, for instance. And so what that's doing is it's clustering, it's identifying leaders, partnership opportunities. We're also bringing our higher ed and our K-12 leaders to that table. We're inviting our state leaders to the table to inform future public policy and grant opportunities, and they help pay for the darn thing, which is really nice too. But we just have to take by the bull by the horns and keep moving. I think that there's a huge role for business to push on public policy to support this work.
Yep. And just one thing I want to pull on a thread there too is that the key piece of that is business leading in that means business providing information, and information is what drives policy, and policy is what drives funding, which is what drives the programs that are available in your local regions, right?
100%.
And so when we're able to really clearly articulate what our needs are as a business community, we see better outcomes that are aligned to our needs.
100%.
So Lydia, thinking about this from a global or a national perspective, what do you think are some of the most effective regional and national policy levers to help encourage upskilling as a priority? And how can businesses and governments work together to scale successful models?
Sure. Well, I think this coalition model, and the Chamber leads a lot of these coalitions around the US and even internationally through the AmCham. So, I'm a big supporter of the Chamber as a convener and using the voice and power of its members to really represent what business can bring to the table and what businesses need in order to drive strong local and regional economies. But it's that information, right? So it's where the jobs are, what exactly is needed for those job roles in order to drive business, drive economic growth, have those pathways for economic opportunity and mobility, and then make sure that there are opportunities, both public and private, for people to engage in the training that's needed to prepare people for those jobs that are available. We do have, obviously, in the US, some public data sets that start to inform that work, but I think having information directly from industry at a state and local level, as well as a national level, a grain size that is appropriate for local decision makers to be able to drive dollars where they're needed most. It's one thing for us to have federal policy, but we've got to be able to translate that into local needs that are specific to what's needed where people are. There are all kinds of new I guess the ideas are not necessarily new, but some of the policies that are being passed are new around training accounts and other ways. But we believe that, for instance, through Skills Build, we're providing a lot of opportunity for training for free. Take those dollars for paid training and use them to add on to what you can get for free. We had done a survey a couple of years ago with Morning Consult, and we found about 50% of people thought a job in tech was not for them, it was too expensive, and they didn't know where to start. And it's one of the things that surprised us. So we said, start with us, get the foundation you need. We have free courses on AI fundamentals, on cybersecurity fundamentals, data analytics. We have 2 certificates, again, one on cyber, one on data analytics. We helped to develop with Colorado, Alabama, Louisiana, and California, so that there were those bridges for people from where they are to the jobs that they're interested in data and cyber, reviewed by ACE, carrying with them. One has 8 recommended college credits and the other 12. But we looked at what was needed in the market. We developed something that filled a gap. This was, a public-private partnership, including some support with, a partner, Jobs for the Future, to fill a need. We believe this is the kind of thing that businesses do well, where business can lead and we can bring others with us. We work closely with our clients and our partners on similar kinds of skilling initiatives, but absolutely taking those and then translating them into pilots. This is the kind of thing I know you do with TPM, and then seeing how you make that part of the system and really look for systems change.
Absolutely. You started to touch on this, a great pivot to my next question. AI, hot topic right now, right? Not impacting the way any of us are doing work. Lydia, how do you see that AI is actually reshaping the skills that employees are looking for and that job seekers need? And kind of how is IBM, if you could go a little bit deeper, leveraging AI in workforce development?
So first, I'll start with what's expected of us as IBMers is to look at all the ways that we can, with approved technology. So I would say we do a lot around governance and responsible use of AI. and happy to talk to people more at a later time if you're considering what are the internal kinds of approaches and policies you need before you start implementing to make sure that you're keeping your data and your business safe. But beyond that, we are expected to become as facile and productive as we can using, again, different tools that use AI so that we can free up time to do those things I mentioned earlier that are uniquely human. The collaboration, the strategic planning, the design thinking kinds of exercises where we are looking at, can you take 30% of your time that's spent on repetitive or routine tasks or the kinds of summaries and analyses and insights that would be generated? Can you use tools to do that work, save yourself time, and then apply it in ways that you're doing teamwork and other things? What I would say is we have to make sure that as we look at transformation of jobs, we don't lose sight of making sure that people know how to use the tools and don't lose that human in the loop where people are in charge of the technology and using it where it is needed most, but also using their critical thinking to make sure it's applied in the right way. And so making sure that people are making decisions and reviewing what does good look like, not just use it, accept whatever it gives you, and move on. So that's something where, the recent report from Lightcast that talks about the broken rung on the career ladder, these lower rungs where people are learning what good looks like from their managers, from senior people in the business, we have to make sure we preserve those kinds of mentoring relationships and other things as jobs change. Absolutely. So there's a role for business to play there. There's a role for making sure that we don't skip over the relationships that are needed to make sure that entry-level roles, as they level up, people who are in those roles still learn what does good look like for my role, for these tasks, while I'm leveraging this technology that is newer.
Absolutely.
So I'll stop there. I'm sure we'll get back to it. But we're looking at how we use it every day. We're offering courses for free externally for people to start doing that, and then we're working with our colleagues and partners around the world to talk about how are they doing it, what's needed, how is talent acquisition changing, how is preparation changing, and how is higher ed changing, and other ways that we are looking at pathways into employment.
Right. I always say sometimes ChatGPT is the best intern I've ever had. So really, utilizing it alongside your skill set. So Wes, you mentioned you sit on a few different boards. So I'd like to kind of ask you a similar question, but both from Pinnacle's perspective and across the state of Colorado. How are you seeing that AI is influencing businesses within the state, particularly those that are not tech businesses, right? Yeah. They're thinking about this maybe for the first time. There are a lot of rural areas within Colorado. What are you seeing happening there, and how might AI be deployed in the coming years?
That's a great question. I'm going to stay in my lane on this one, especially with IBM on the phone here. I've learned a lot about AI that I never thought I would learn because of the conversations that we're having in Colorado from a regulatory perspective, and I will offer this. I think we would all agree in this room that the development of AI is developed at a global level by global companies that are doing business internationally. Where would be the most practical place to begin regulating that framework? We do need regulatory framework on this topic. Probably down the street, over here. Not your state would not be the best place to start regulating a global topic, which is exactly what we did in Colorado 2 years ago. Colorado became the first state in the country to sort of offer a sweeping regulatory framework for both the developers of AI, IBMs, the Amazon, Googles, and the deployers of AI. Could be your small business down the street. It's been a complete mess because we don't even know what the definitions are. Because again, these systems as a deployer, right? Like we're dependent on the integrity of the product that is being developed. It's almost impossible. And so I would strongly recommend that if this conversation kicks up in your state, keep that in mind. And if these folks don't act soon, because we do need strong disclosures, we need to make sure that AI is not being discriminatory. All of the things, human oversight, all the things that Lydia mentioned, that framework needs to be developed here so that states have more certainty in how to figure out this path forward. Otherwise, it's just going to be a complete patchwork, and it's going to be very difficult to unwind, and this stuff is moving very, very, very fast.
With that in mind, I'd love in our last minute, is there any advice you might give to businesses, workforce organizations on kind of getting started in the space, thinking about upskilling, thinking about AI as a component of that?
Yeah, very quickly, just generally to career-connected learning and experiences from Pinnacle. Make sure that you have leadership buy-in from at the very top levels. A successful program requires cultural integration across the entire organization, and that will yield benefits that you won't even think about today. In terms of leadership development within your own organization. We've had 50 or 60 coaches, supervisors, mentors along the way with our apprenticeship program, for instance. That's been huge. And fail fast, y'all. That's what we expect of our employees. Let's also just be willing to fail fast. It's okay, because it's better to get moving and learn and adapt than it would be to try to overanalyze this stuff and not move at all, because none of it's going to be perfect. Let's just go. Move.
And Lydia, any words of advice?
Sure. I would say reach out to us if you haven't. If for upskilling, we'd love to have you with us with Skills Build. For thinking about how you're approaching implementation, it's just like any other change management process. You start with what it is you're trying to do, and then you think about how you're using the technology. You put the frameworks in place, and then you move forward. It doesn't have to take a long time. We have responsible business frameworks for use of AI in your organization, and happy to share those frameworks with you. My colleague in IBM Consulting, Phaedra Boinadatis, does a lot of that work, and I know that we've done some of that with the Chamber. So have your frameworks in place, understand responsible use, put a plan in place before you start on the transformation, get your employees and your colleagues the upskilling that they need. You can get some for free, and there's some that's out there that's paid, but make sure you get started. Start somewhere, start today. We'd love it to be with us with IBM.
Amazing. Well, thank you both, Lydia and Wes, for your time today, and to you, the audience, for joining us. Please enjoy the rest of Business Solves 2025.
Thank you.
Good job. We're going to go this way.
Nice job.
Hi, everyone. For those of you who weren't here yesterday, I'm Mark DeCourcy, the Senior Vice President here at the Chamber Foundation. And for our last panel of this conference, we have an all-star cast of companies up here to talk about bolstering American competitiveness, investing in America. when we thought which panel and what topic should we cover at the end, unanimously the staff's like, this one. We need to find companies who are really investing here in the United States, doing amazing things, helping where help is needed, and we came up with these 4. One of the things that we have a privilege here at the Chamber is because we have such a wide view of what everyone's doing, both here in the United States, but also around the world, in corporate America, we have a pretty good sense of what good looks like. And this isn't just good, this is great. So let me introduce the panel. On the far end, Rachel Wolbers. She helps lead external affairs for Google here in Washington, D.C. Next to Rachel is Rosemary Lahaski. She is the Vice President of Government Relations at Pearson. Next to her, Shane Carr. He is the Vice President of Public Affairs at Stellantis. And next to me, Daniela Foster. She's the Senior Vice President of Global Public Affairs for market access and sustainability. So we're going to get into what each of them are doing here in the United States, the investments they're making, ask them some really pointed questions about how those investments were decided, how they're made, which partners they have, and why, and get into a couple other closing thoughts before we wrap up this conference. So I'll stop there because you're here to hear from them, not me. Daniela, tell us about what Bayer's doing here in the US.
Well, thank you, Mark. It's good to be here, and it's great to see so many friendly and familiar faces in the audience. So Bayer, for those of you who don't know, we're probably the largest company working in the US focused on health and nutrition. A few things that we've done recently that you may have heard about. We've invested over $20 billion in recent years in the US. We also just announced the expansion of our Myerstown, Pennsylvania facility where we make our consumer health products. It's actually our largest facility now globally. And some of the products you probably know are aspirin, Claritin, Midol, some of those everyday products that we use. And some of the things that I'm really passionate about are the transitions and shifts that we see coming and the role that we can play in helping those arrive well. So that's everything from a transition to from sick care to well care. So on average, the amount of time that any of us spend with a doctor in a year, particularly on the primary care side, is about an hour and 20 minutes if I'm being generous. And then the rest of the time, it's the daily self-care. And so the science-based self-care solutions and the way that we can use technology, innovation, education, awareness, and community partnerships to deliver that are really exciting. So I'll talk more about that, also doing a ton on the regenerative agriculture side.
Excellent. Remember, we're talking billions, right, from these companies. Shane, Stellantis.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Stellantis, first of all, for those of you who may not be familiar with our corporate parent's name, you will definitely be familiar with the brands Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram, our iconic US brands. I'm a Jeep guy personally. That's why I came to the company 10 years ago. So we just made a very exciting announcement, actually the largest announcement, single largest investment announcement in the company's history, $13 billion in the US during the next 4 years, mostly aimed at growing our kind of existing footprint. As one of the big three, we have that sort of traditional manufacturing Midwest footprint, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, and this investment will touch facilities in all 4 states. We'll add about 5,000 new hourly jobs to our existing 40-ish thousand in the US, and we'll grow our production capacity in the US by about 50%. So it's really a huge investment. Super exciting. Lots of work for me and my team coming in the next few years as we implement these investments, which is great.
And what we hear from Bayer and from Stellantis, a lot of these investments are place-based, like actual physical locations. I think what you'll hear from Pearson and Google is it's not unique to any one particular building, right, or what plant or facility. But what they're doing is they're investing across the entire country in people. So, Rosemary.
That's right. Yeah, thank you. I'm at Pearson. For those of you that don't know, Pearson is the world's leading learning company. Primarily here in the United States, we do K-12 assessments, so measuring students' science, math, reading. We also do English language learning across the globe, and we do a lot of workforce skills, and that's really where we've been really focused around certification, industry certification for individuals. We are really the experts in the science of learning. We believe that learning how to learn is going to be the key skill to have in the coming years, especially in the age of AI. We've recently made major investments around mapping skills for individuals to really see what the skills they actually have and how do they map to jobs that are in demand to help them close some of the friction in terms of the hiring and retraining process. We've helped over 1 million individuals to do that. We've made major investments around AI, artificial intelligence, especially in education. We were just a few weeks ago at the White House talking about helping over hundreds of thousands of US high school teachers gain free access to training for AI certification and the certification to show that they have the validation for that stuff. And then finally, we have over $350 million in education bonds where we're really investing across the globe around underserved communities, making sure they have access to online education and alternative credentials.
Rachel, Google's investing in technology across the country with all different cohorts, whether it's with small businesses or nonprofits. Tell us more about this. And everyone knows, Google's located in California, but you're ubiquitous across the entire country, right? I mean, entire world. So have at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having us. So Google, our mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And that does really help drive a lot of our charitable giving. Back when the company went public in 2004, our founders pledged 1% of all profits and equity to go to charitable and entrepreneur and nonprofits. Over the past 20 years, we've given over $50 billion away. And that sounds like such a crazy amount of money, but some of the programs that we've been working on this year and really focusing on this year are around our AI Opportunity Fund, which Mark mentioned is really spread across the country. As Google is investing in states, in Arkansas and Pennsylvania, there are charitable AI literacy, media, and training programs. But one part of this AI Opportunity Fund that Mark and I are very excited about is that Google.org has given the Chamber of Commerce a $5 million grant to help train small businesses across the United States. And on the charitable side, this grant, this program, this training that the Chamber is hoping to have fully up and running by the end of this year will teach all kinds of different AI. It's not just about Google. It is really how can AI fit your small business? What is fit for purpose for growing your small business, for scaling up, and really creating a workforce for the future and scaling those small businesses.
Well, Rachel, thank you for mentioning us. I did tell her to say that.
No,
never. But you have other partners too, not just the Chamber. Tell us a little bit about those types of partnerships who are helping execute Google's philanthropic and charitable mission.
Yeah, absolutely. As part of this AI Opportunity Fund, we are working with electricians, so the Electrical Training Alliance. We've been working with the Manufacturing Institute. We're really and have our Google certifications, but really trying to find, I know the last panel talked a little bit about four-year education and that not being what everybody needs, and what the jobs of the future really are not necessarily needing a four-year education. And so how can we, Google, help some of these larger trade associations, these organizations, scale training that uses AI for farming, AI with electricity, HVAC workers are getting AI training programs. So it is, I would say, a very diverse set of workforce needs that we're trying to help meet.
And those types of investments, particularly in the small business community, but even for the individual to be able to better access AI and apply it in their daily jobs, it's going to make them a better business.
Absolutely.
And that's good for all of us. And it's good for our communities when that happens, because other people in this building will tell you there are other countries out there also pushing the AI envelope. And if we don't do it, they certainly will and beat us to it, right?
Absolutely.
So, Rosemary, Pearson can't do this alone either in the education space. Talk to us about how you engage others in partnerships to execute on what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, we are actually working with some of the biggest hyperscalers, I think, across the globe, Google being one, but also Microsoft and AWS, even Meta, to really try and infuse the way in which we're learning into the flow of work. And so I think the future where we see sort of things heading is this idea that not everybody does need a 4-year degree, but that you do need something beyond high school. And we have a sort of an inflection point, I think, happening in the country right now where I think it's like 43 million people do not have a high school diploma. We're looking at even more that have some college but no degree, that they are racking up massive amounts of debt, and then at the end of the day, they don't really have a skill to show. So how do we start to find talent and opportunity everywhere? And how do we start to ensure that companies understand the skills gaps that are happening within their own workforce, train them today in real time, and help to solve, I think, some of their own productivity needs. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're working with some of the biggest companies across the country to get that done.
And Shane, same question to you. Stellantis, you have others that you work with to be able to tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, and in our case, obviously, we're investing in physical facilities that thousands of people are going to come into and out of every single day, 2 to 3 shifts a day. And so when you think about that, right from the beginning, you want to, reach out and start building relationships inside the communities that are right around those facilities, as well as obviously, elected officials and government leaders, public utilities, first responders, right? In the case of a large factory, you want to have those relationships. So there's a wide variety of stakeholders, and then, in the case of the first plant that I was involved in actually building as part of my job was also the first automotive plant that was built in Detroit in the last 30 years, our Mack plant, and we worked very closely with the mayor and the city council and made a very conscious decision to locate that plant on the east side of Detroit, which had not yet experienced kind of the turnaround that the rest of the city had been part of. And so, we were kind of an economic anchor for that part of the city, and just building relationships with the NGOs that were operating and serving the community around that plant, and then small businesses that, it's a give and take. We selfishly, we want our employees to be part of the community and have access to services and businesses within proximity of the plant, but it ends up being very much a two-way street where, again, locating a facility where thousands of people are going to be coming in and out every single day really contributes to the economic health and revitalization of an area.
Sure. And Daniela, same question to you, but also if you could tag on to something that Shane said about location. I think it wouldn't surprise anyone that a large automobile manufacturing facility would be located in Detroit, right? And there's a lot that goes into that. But for Bayer, you could pretty much go anywhere. How do you choose that place? What are you looking for in terms of we should invest here and why?
Just that small question
Yeah,
mark.
small question.
So
We've got
I
plenty.
think for us, I mean, we have 150 facilities across the U.S. And then, like I mentioned, in Myerstown, Pennsylvania, we have now our largest consumer health manufacturing site. So we do look at some of these similar considerations around economic revitalization, business friendliness, those kinds of things. We've also just made an additional $100 million investment in the St. Louis area to expand some of our facilities there. And then in other areas that are breakthrough on the therapeutic side, like cell and gene therapy, that's where we've expanded into Berkeley because there's really state-of-the-art facilities and research and development. So for us, there's a pragmatic component. There's also a piece around economic growth. We also spend $1 billion annually on research and development. So being able to continue that and having access to academic institutions, et cetera, is also a critical part of that.
And if I could stay with you for a sec, Bayer has a significant U.S. presence. You have your headquarters in New Jersey for the U.S., but
in St. Louis for agriculture.
In St. Louis for agriculture, that's right. Sorry, but your global headquarters is not in the U.S. How hard is it to convince people overseas to invest here in the United States?
I don't think it's that hard at all. I mean, in our case, when we always look at what population are we trying to serve, and what are the solutions we can provide, and go from there. So it becomes pretty pragmatic. And if I think about the U.S. and our recent expansion of our Myerstown facility, I mean, between aspirin and Claritin and all of these consumer health products that we produce, you have to be close to the consumer, not only in understanding them, but in manufacturing. So it's a pretty congruent case.
And Shane, would you say the same for Stellantis?
Yeah, I would. And I think if you look at the auto industry broadly, you see a lot of foreign direct investment in the U.S., a lot of companies coming here. You really have to be here to understand and serve the market well. It's tough to do that from Europe or Japan or Korea. Again, it's not just us. You see a lot of our competitors who are investing heavily in the U.S. because you really have to be an effective competitor here. And it's a terrific automotive market if you can be an effective competitor here.
And Rosemary, for those who don't know, Pearson is headquartered in London, but you have, again, significant presence and interest here in the U.S.
Yep.
How does that work when you talk to the people back in England?
No question the U.S. is our top market. I think when companies like Bayer and Stellantis open up a plant or a building in a place, they need a qualified workforce. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to make sure that the people of Detroit or the people of St. Louis have got the skills ready to go on day one. And so that's what we're doing. We believe that the United States is going to be a leader when it comes to the global sort of war on talent, and we're making sure that that's happening.
So, Rachel, I mean, you're the outlier. Google is here and a uniquely American company. Does that add additional pressure for Google to invest here? Or is it something that your founders just would have done anyways?
I think they would have done it anyway. I mean, we are a global company, right? Everybody has used Google in other countries. But 75% of our workforce is still here in the United States. And I would say over 75% of our investment is still going here in the US as well. This is an important market, and it's really not just San Francisco. Some of our largest offices are in Chicago and Detroit. I don't know why I keep looking at you for Detroit. Chicago, Detroit, Austin, New York. So we're all over the country too. It's not just Mountain View, California.
Yeah. And with that, right, it's when Google is, you mentioned it in your opening comments about kind of the purpose of the company and the founders' promise to reinvest in philanthropy. For those of you who were here at the end of the day yesterday, Catherine Luger, who's the Executive Vice President of Corporate Affairs at Hilton, she talked about Hilton's true north and how every decision that Hilton makes they think about that. They're kind of corporate purpose, if you will. Can all four of you just talk a little bit about the corporate purpose of the company and how each and every decision is kind of driven from that sentiment? Daniela, it's a tough question, right?
Yeah. So maybe a couple of thoughts on this. It's interesting. I was just at a dinner not that long ago with a number of companies and organizations, and the moderator said, "All right, the one thing I don't want to hear at all today is True North. Please don't say it again." And so I think it kind of gives you a little window into how cynical some of what can seem like a corporate platitude is. I can tell you, in our case, we spent a lot of time around, all right, what is our mission? What is our mission as a company? And where we landed is that our mission is health for all, hunger for none. And you can look at that and say, okay, that's a great tagline, but so what? What does that mean? Well, for us, when we've had to make very hard strategic choices around where we're going to invest, where we're not going to invest, where we're going to double down, what some of our future value pools may be, that has become a very strong anchor. And it's been particularly helpful as times just get more ambiguous. And none of us can really predict the future. We have to make bets. And so that anchor and compass has been incredibly helpful. And because of that, we've doubled down in some of our work around health access and some of our work around maternal health and our work around regenerative agriculture. So it has been helpful. And then the last thing I'll say on this, and the question that I think about, and I think all businesses should think about, is what would the world be like if your business wasn't in it? So if you closed up shop tomorrow, what critical need would be left unfilled? And that's a frame that I've found helpful.
Is a good frame. I wouldn't have a Jeep to drive. Shane.
There you go.
Yeah, but I mean, how do you feel about that? I mean, when Stellantis is looking forward, how reflective are you on kind of your mission?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because when I joined the company, it was FCA, Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, and then we merged, and then about a year ago, the CEO, who had the reins at the time of the merger, left the company, and we have just gotten a new CEO within the last 100 days. New CEO, but not new to the company because he's been with the company for over 25 years. And his mantra, I think, is the right mantra, right? Which is that we're going to be a customer-centric company. Because the reality is that, in order to be successful as an auto manufacturer, we have to make exciting products that our customers want to buy. The Jeeps, the Dodge muscle cars, the Ram pickup trucks. They have to appeal to our consumers. They have to meet a variety of different needs that people have, whether it's hauling a bunch of kids to soccer practice, or towing a boat on the weekend, or whatever it is. We need to provide vehicles that meet a wide array of needs. That are high quality, not in the shop all the time, and that deliver value at an affordable price. Those are all of those things are hugely challenging in the current environment, but both from a marketplace standpoint and a regulatory standpoint, and all the things. So I think having the customer at the center of everything we do is, really critical to our company, but I assume it is to kind of everybody out there.
And the two of you, feel free to answer that, but because we're short on time and I've got a couple questions I desperately want to ask, because we have a bunch of companies in the room and some of their nonprofit partners, and they're looking at the four of you and they're like, hey, these are four great companies. So, Rachel, how does somebody partner with Google?
How do they work with Google? Google, it's a wonderful company because it does touch a lot of aspects of your life. But I was thinking a little bit about the small businesses that we met just last week, and I think one of the great things about Google is that most of our services are free, right? You can open up your Gemini app or your Gemini browser. I spoke with a small business who said she's a quilter, and she just asked Gemini, how do I make more money doing this? And it suggested, why don't you sell the scraps? And that has become her largest revenue source of just selling your scraps. So there's just the day-to-day smaller interfaces with Google. We, on the grant-making side, do tend to try to find, we call value amplifiers. The Chamber of Commerce, with your large network of businesses all across the country, when we're thinking about who could actually train small businesses, who could train 40,000 small businesses in 3 years, and that we would trust to do that, I actually don't think there's another organization out there, maybe, but the Chamber's obviously the gold star here. And so we sometimes identify sort of retroactively, the electricians are the same, right? The Electrical Training Alliance, there's a one-stop shop that Google could give a large grant to, and they can be an amplifier. I hope that is the answer to your question of there's the top down and the bottom up. It can be a hard company to work with. Not that the Chamber is easier to work with on time to time,
Sometimes,
but
right?
We're both big bureaucratic organizations.
Yeah. Rosemary?
Yeah, I think technology skills are moving a lot faster than human skills. It's just happening. And so a company like Pearson, I think, is heavily investing in trying to make sure we keep up. We're hearing some pretty scary things happening right now with layoffs. And what does that mean for individuals, and how are they going to be able to use these new products to be able to be productive but also keep their jobs, right? And so I think at Pearson we're 100% committing to making sure that these individuals have the skills they need and they're being delivered to them in a way that makes the most sense. So it's happening during work, it's happening outside of work. We're providing flexible, different modalities around training. We're making sure companies are involved in the training and developing it. And so we're doing a lot of that, I think, together to make sure that we remain the most competitive in the country, in the world.
So we only have a couple minutes left. And Daniela, you've been on panels with me before, so you've seen this movie before, right? Our audience has had a lot of information thrown at them over the last day and a half. I want them to remember this panel. I want them to remember at least one thing that each of you said. What is the most important thing, Daniela, for this audience to remember about Bayer? Only one. I know there's many.
I'm going to give you the most important thing for everyone to take away, not just Bayer specific, because I think that's more valuable. One of the themes I've heard is around partnerships. And I have to tell you, I know we have been talking about partnerships for decades. In a former life, I worked at the State Department, set up an Office of Public-Private Partnerships. I think this moment is different because what I'm seeing is industries that have traditionally either not worked together or have been wildly siloed or fragmented, particularly if I think about the space of health, now really absolutely have to work together and partner. So I am seeing much more of these place-based partnerships where it's industry, government, civic organizations, NGOs, all working together. We just had a lunch on this yesterday, and you probably heard about the Interrupt. These are the types of things that are now emerging. This is the path forward, and this is, I think, where the opportunity also lies for this group and for all of us to work together.
Thank you. Shane.
Again, for speaking as someone who, again, puts physical facilities into a place, I think being proactive and engaging with the community and the environment that you are going into or that you exist within, right? It's sort of the trite, being good corporate citizens, but being good corporate citizens it's a two-way street. you want the community that your facility is in to thrive. You want children to be well educated and to have access to training programs that will make them good employees for your company at some point down the line if that's what they want to do. You want the fire and EMS services to be top-notch. We just donated land in Kokomo for them to double the size of a fire facility that serves our plant. It also serves the surrounding community. So being again kind of thinking about that two-way street, the kind of long game that you want in terms of your existence inside a community, your coexistence, and again listening and being proactive with your community, I think is incredibly important.
Yeah, I agree with both of these points, and I'm in the public policy space, so I would just say at the end of the day, business is the consumer of a lot of these policies, especially around education and workforce. You have to get engaged. You cannot just let it sort of happen and then hope that the federal government or the state governments are going to sort of figure this thing out on their own. So that would be the one lasting message I would say is please get engaged.
Yep. Rachel, you got the last word on the panel.
Sure. I actually was going to build on something Rosemary said in her last point, which was that scientific and technology is advancing at an incredibly fast pace right now. There's a lot of worry and concern around AI, but I think the one thing that I have really taken away from my time at Google and working on AI is that it is a hyper-specific and hyper-local technology. You can really use it for pretty much any type of job that you're doing, and you can have it help you solve your very individual problems as well as your community problems, right? We see the mayor of Memphis is using AI to identify potholes. We know that AI is helping find new treatments for cancer. So you can get from the largest to the smallest. It really just is a limit of your imagination, I think.
And that's it for the panel. Let's give them a round of applause. Before we have Joe from the Solutions Desk come out and close us out, I just wanted to mention a couple things. One is the recordings from this main stage over the last couple days will be available within a couple days, as well as photos. We're going to send all of you attendees a survey because we want your input to help us make this event better in the future. And we hope that you stay involved with us. Come to our events, call us up, let us know how we can help you deliver on what you're doing for all of us here across the United States and around the world. So that's it for us. Thanks, everyone.
Well, hello again. So we're bringing the solutions bench onto the main stage, joined again by Damon Young. Damon, we get to bookend this event. Man, we covered some ground over the last couple days. So my question to you, and I know you have a couple things you want to say, but my first question would be, anything stand out, anything kind of resonate with you over the last couple days?
Yeah, the common theme that stood out to me that I just can't stop kind of thinking about is partnership. You know, partnerships were talked about throughout this entire time. And the thing I'm thinking about, Joe, is like, who was the person that made the call? Like some of these profound big partnerships, who was the person that sent the email, that sent the text, that made the call, that made a connection at, where did that work? Yeah, like when Hilton and American Express decide to do something massive like that, someone had to pick up the phone or say something to somebody, and like, who was that, and what courage did it take to say, like, let's collab on that?
That's awesome. Now, you gave us some tips yesterday to kick us off. I know we want you to piece it together.
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave the stage to you and let you give you some space, add to what you started yesterday, giving the advice. how do we piece that together to close us out?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think we're just going to talk about what problem is your problem to solve and what partnership do you need. So I'll be happy to share a few thoughts.
Okay, I'm out of here. I'm getting out of here.
All right,
stage is yours.
All right, let's give Joe a round of applause in the solutions desk. What an amazing job. And one more round of applause for just the entire chamber team. I mean, this is a phenomenal event. It's really fantastic. Well, I've been tasked with really an impossible task, which is to piece together all that we heard. And it's so many themes that we could draw on, and so many things that we could consider. But I have a few that I think that we might be able to grab onto. But it is crazy how you take in so much great information. And I was thinking about it's kind of weird. I have observed so much good work in the last day and a half that I'm tired. Like, I didn't even do any of the work. And I'm just sitting there thinking about all of the work of the coalition building and all of the work of the project management. Like, every partnership that we've looked at and heard from required a ton of work. And the thing that's so fascinating about that is that business is good at that. Like, the business skill of finding a challenge, figuring out what the steps are, and driving through that change with their capabilities, business is so good at. And so when we think about how we can land this plane, I think one of our main challenges we have to consider is that our bags are packed. Our Uber is called, I'm ready to hit it. So I'm going to ask just to stay with me for a couple minutes as you consider that flight home. Mine's going back to Wichita, Kansas, where I'm from. I'm supposed to land at 9:59 if all goes well tonight. And I know that you have thoughts like that on your mind. But stay with me as we try to close this together. And what I would like you to do is actually, I'm going to use 30 seconds of our time because I really want you to think about what is your one problem that you're going to either take action on or you're going to double down on. Maybe you're already working on it. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds. And I want to inspire you with this Mary Oliver quote that you probably have heard, but she says, "What, friend, will you do with your one wild and precious life?" Like what Michael was saying today about for good. Like, what is your for good? Take 30 seconds and just be silent, take a deep breath, and consider before we go on our way. 30 seconds. When they only give you 7 minutes, 30 seconds is a big commodity. I hope that you used it well. For me, I think what I'm going to double down on is really thinking about the health of leaders. In my consultancy, that's something I focus on, is the health of leaders, and I think none of these initiatives are possible without healthy leaders. And I think that that's something. In our community in Wichita, also, we're working on a project through a nonprofit that I help run called Lead Wichita that is focused on recidivism. And I think, when I think about all the issues we could tackle, in Wichita, 43% of people who are incarcerated are back in the system within 3 years. And I think for good, that's a challenge that I think deserves our best work. So when I go home, that's the call I'm going to make, is like, how do I build coalitions and partnerships to move the needle on yours, or to move the needle on that? I wonder what yours is. So if you could solve one problem, what would it be? In other words, what is your problem? The problem that kept tugging at you during these sessions, the ones that you couldn't quite shake, they're often your next assignment. And I know many of you are already working in it, and it's just time to double down. And doubling down might look different. Doubling down might be taking care of yourself. Doubling down might be asking for help. But whatever it is, double down. Maybe it's workforce development. Maybe it's civic trust. Maybe it's disaster resilience. Maybe it's recidivism. Maybe it's access to capital. Maybe it's housing. Maybe it's literacy. I don't know, but you do. So I'm asking you to hold your problem. What is your problem? When you're driving later, if you're on an Uber, when you're flying, like, make an appointment with yourself to grab onto that problem and hold it. And then secondly, who is the relationship or partner that you need to disrupt the status quo? Who's your solar to affordable housing? Who's your big tech to pharmaceuticals? Who's your American Express to Hilton? Who's your AOF to FedEx? There's a partner out there that's waiting to collaborate. They might be waiting for you to call. Every story we heard had this thread that real change starts with relationship, and it starts with the end in mind. So what is your next step on this journey? For me, my journey has been a weird one. I've been in ministry. I was in construction for 20 years. I've been in leadership development. I've helped run a chamber of commerce as a board chair, and now I'm a small business owner as a consultant. But one of my very first roles that I had was a collegiate debater. And when I think about the evidence, if someone said that business can't tackle the biggest challenges of our day, what I would do is I would offer the last day and a half as evidence. And I would argue that business can and will solve the toughest challenges of our day. But it's going to take each of us taking action, and it's going to take each of us to choose your problem, and in the next week, name that challenge from your unique position and take action on it, and then reach outside your bubble. Initiate one meaningful conversation in the next week. You are uniquely positioned on your journey to do something that matters. You are uniquely positioned to do something amazing on your journey that can impact people around you. You know, another theme of the conference was authenticity. And so as I was thinking about how to close out our time, I decided one of the most authentic ways that I could close out our time would be by doing a poem. You see, I used to write all the time, and I never read or performed out in public. And in the last year, I've been getting out of my comfort zone, and I've been doing that. So I decided that I would write an acrostic poem, but I'm going to need your help. Okay, so you ready to close this thing out, Business Solves 2025? Are you willing to help me? Yeah. Oh, come on, I got one person. Are you ready to help me? Yeah. Okay, so an acrostic poem, you say the letter. So when I say the letter, I want you to yell the letter, okay? So like, solves is our word. So I'm going to do a little intro, and we'll close this thing out. When business solves problems, it is a fundamental shift. People will follow because we're the ones taking the risk. We dare to dream for common grace and common good of civic life. We push through the ordinary silos and strife. We solve. Business solves. Now, here's the acrostic part. We S. There you got it. I say S, you say S. We S. We shape change by staying curious because it's hard to be furious when you're curious. We O. Organize collaborations rooted in optimism. We L. We lead and lean in on integrated problems that demand integrated solutions because time is life. We V. We value trust because we know it is the ultimate currency. We E. We educate and encourage the next generation with future skills now. And finally, we S. We stay at it to be the best. And you know this, we never, ever stop because business solves problems. Now you go solve yours. Thank you.
Very proud of everybody in this room right now. We made it to the finish line. I feel kind of bad now that I don't have a poem to follow, Damon. I'm sorry. But I just want to say a couple quick things. I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank everyone who had a hand in making this event possible. It's an all-team effort, and I know some of you who put on events, you know what it takes, and there's a lot of moving parts. So I just want to acknowledge all of those folks, and of course our sponsors for making this thing happen. I wanted to reference one thing our president, Mike Carney, said this morning, and it's something we say all the time at the foundation. We're doers. We take action. And I hope that everyone here took something away over the last couple of days. Maybe you heard something, saw something that implores you to take action when you go back to your communities. That's the whole point. That's why we do these events. We convene folks, and that's probably our superpower, is to convene great minds, great people, great thinkers, to be innovative and to take action. So I'm gonna ask you guys to do two things because I do communication, so I have to do one of these. You have to follow us on social. If you're not following us right now, go ahead and do it today. At USCC Foundation. Let us know how we did. Let us know what you like. Give us ideas for the next event. It would make my social media manager, Alicia, very happy to know that I did my part and told you guys to make sure you're following us. The second thing, we're going to send you a survey after this event within the next week or so. I can't say it enough, but it really does help inform how we put on these events, the content, the structure. We want to hear from you. What did you like? What can we do better? What was something maybe we didn't include that we can include for the next time? I know we all don't like doing surveys, but I have to say we really do use them, and we really do look through them, and we really do use them to help us build events. So with that, I want to thank everyone again. We appreciate you being here, and that's Business Solves 2025. Be safe and be kind to each other more than anything else, okay? Thanks, and we'll see you again next time. Thank you.